Hello there, very good morning. Good to see you. It's 6 o'clock, Tuesday, 12th of September. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News, online, on TV, on radio with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thank you for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The parliamentary researcher arrested on suspicion of spying for China claims he is completely innocent as fears grow of a network of Beijing informants at Westminster.
Real concern in Westminster and anger too. Concern that there may be other people working in that building behind us who are actually working on behalf of the Chinese government. And also anger from many MPs who feel they've been kept in the dark for so long about what's been going on.
With both legal and illegal migration at record highs, dissatisfaction with the government's handling of the issue is now at its highest level since before the Brexit referendum.
The controversial online safety bill goes through its final stages. Reality TV stars are set to descend on Downing Street to support the controversial new regulation.
And we'll be bringing you the very latest weather updates with Alex Burkill.
Good morning. A bit of rain around today and it will feel cooler than of late too. I'll have more details later.
Look forward to that. Unfortunately, as always, Paul Coit will be here with the latest from the world of sport. And what are we looking at there, Paul?
Well, I don't know whether I actually bother telling you now, Eamonn, quite frankly.
Know.
I don't think I care. Paul Pogba, he's in all sorts of trouble after testing positive for testosterone, and it's the 150th anniversary game of England and Scotland tonight.
Yeah, now wait a minute. Pogba is testing positive for testosterone.
Yes.
Does that just not mean he's highly charged?
Well, no. When you see the amounts, that it actually means he's more highly charged than legally should be highly charged.
Okay.
Whereas, by the way, I've tested negative this morning. No performance enhancing anything for me today.
Well,
No comment from Eamonn.
see how you're enhanced today. Let us know. You can join in any of our discussions. So you were saying, what's the anniversary of the English?
150th year.
That's in Glasgow tonight.
In Glasgow tonight.
Look forward to that. OK. So the Isle enemies meet tonight. Your views, your memories, gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet @gbnews.
So our top story this morning, questions have been raised over the UK's China policy after a British parliamentary researcher was arrested on suspicion of spying for Beijing.
Well, this comes as the business secretary, Kemi Badenoch, claims that Britain cannot afford to cut ties with China and insisted that a row over spying should not result in any breaking of official communications with Beijing.
The Prime Minister, meanwhile, has told the House of Commons that the sanctity of Westminster must be protected following these events, with the parliamentary researcher in question strenuously denying all allegations.
I love how he sort of makes it out that it's a church or a cathedral or religion. Sanctity of this place. Nothing too much holy going on there. But what is going on? Let's go to our political correspondent, Catherine Foster, who's in Westminster, for all the developments. Be careful what you say, Catherine. Somebody's probably listening.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel.
Morning.
So this huge row about China is really rumbling on. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of concern from MPs. Some fear that this man who has been arrested back in March, important to say, not charged with anything as yet, that they fear that he might be the first of many, that there might be several other people working in Westminster for the Chinese state. And of course, if that turns out to be the case, it wouldn't be the first time that China has interfered in our affairs. Let's have a little look.
The idea that China may have recruited a British national to work as a spy may come as a shock, but it's not entirely a new thing. Back in 2020, 3 journalists were expelled from the UK for allegedly working as Chinese agents while posing for one of the country's press agencies. Meanwhile, MI5 issued a rare security alert last year, warning that this woman, Christine Lee, is a spy. Lee rejected the accusation and in July this year launched legal action. Former Minister Sir Ian Duncan-Smith claims that ministerial cars may well have been tracked by the Chinese government, and UK ministers have been banned from using TikTok, a social media platform being run by a Chinese company, and was deemed a risk to security. But it's not only China that poses a challenge in the human intelligence wars. In March last year, the UK, together with the US and other allies, exposed historic cyber hacking by Russia's Federal Security Service, which replaced the KGB. Meanwhile, back in February, a British embassy security guard was jailed for spying for Russia.
Important to say, I think, that Christine Lee, who had very strong connections with Labour MP Barry Gardiner, was subsequently not actually charged. But clearly, there's lots going on, and we probably know only a very, very tiny fraction. Now, this, of course, has reunited the ongoing debate within the Conservative Party about how tough we should be with China, the language that we should use. Rishi Sunak said that at the G20 he spoke very strongly to the Chinese PM and said that this sort of behaviour was absolutely unacceptable. We don't know whether the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, who of course went to China in the last few weeks, the first such visit in about 5 years, address this directly or not. But massive pressure on the government, who are resistant to calling China a threat because, of course, they're a second biggest economy in the world. We've got huge economic ties with them. Keir Starmer asked yesterday, wouldn't call China a threat either. He also took to that word challenge, but real pressure on the government now. And Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden yesterday in the House of Commons did suggest that there was a strong case for adding China to an enhanced tier of what they call the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. Now, basically, that would, if that happens, would designate China as a potential risk to UK safety or interests. And it would mean that anybody who was working at the direction of China or for state-owned Chinese companies would have to register that and declare what they were doing, and failure to do so could result in 5 years in jail. But I suspect this story has still got a long way to go, and we probably are only at the beginning of it. But this row about China completely reignited yet again.
And Catherine, another element in all of this is the secrecy that it's been shrouded in. Lots of criticisms of the decision of the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, to keep that arrest back in March just to a minimum of people being informed. MPs saying they had a right to know that. And indeed, don't we, as a society as well, who've put these people into Parliament. And also Lindsay Hoyle yesterday coming out and urging MPs not to name the individual and also not to give details of this case, which some people would say this is a police state if we're keeping secrets about arrests.
But it's to do with the prosecution, isn't it? They're worried about compromising the prosecution. If there is going to be a prosecution, that's the trouble. Right, Catherine.
Don't think Catherine can
Isabel, I can't hear you very well.
Oh dear.
So if you
don't worry.
OK, don't worry, Catherine.
We'll
Thank
take
you.
it from here. Thank you.
We'll make it up the way the government makes it up as well. I laugh Sunak getting up yesterday, all pompous and sanctimonious. The sanctity of this house, the sanctity. Sanctity is a religious term. I just took objection to that. But anyway, it says here, he says when he was at that G20 summit, they said that China had to be in the room with the UK. And Rishi Sunak argued that speaking frankly and directly with Beijing was in the country's national interest. Now, what I say is, how frankly and directly did you speak, little Rishi, in your little suit, going into the room to the Chinese president? I bet you the Chinese president was sweating on that one. He said, hold on, here comes Rishi. Hide me behind this desk.
Well, you don't have to be tall to be intimidating. Most of the dictators and the tyrants of history, Putin, whoever it might be, Napoleon, they're all very small men. I don't think his size is relevant.
Are they smaller than Rishi?
Probably similar height, actually, if there was a lineup.
I doubt it. But I don't believe. I don't believe that Rishi went in and say, "Oh, you."
No.
You do any more business with us and I'll knock your block off. You know,
No,
you do
not
this.
at all. And, you know, he totally doesn't want to take that approach. If anything, he wants to try and keep them as sweet as possible. This pragmatism, I mean, this epoch-defining challenge, what does that even mean, Mr Sunak? Clearly they're a threat.
What is an epoch?
It's like a
Is that
period in time.
Oh, I thought it was like a eunuch.
Like a unicorn.
An
No, it's a
epoch.
period in time. It's the time we live in, an epoch-defining challenge. Who thought that one
So,
up?
look, bottom line is we need China's money, according to this government. Well, they need it.
Well,
need
they
it.
do too, yeah.
Yeah, so basically they're not going to do anything to annoy the Chinese. And but there we go. Your views are very welcome in this. These are just us venting a few frustrations
Thoughts,
about this.
observations.
Observations to all you eunuchs out there. Epochs. What are they? What are the epochs?
I don't know what they are, but we're referring to epochs.
GB Views at gbnews.com, or you can X certificate us all at GB News. But you can't really say X. I mean,
It's ridiculous. I mean, have you seen all the details about his new autobiography that's out, or biography, whichever it is? We're talking about Elon Musk here. I mean, his latest child that he didn't tell us about, we just found out he's had an 11th child.
An
He's got
11th child.
another extraordinary name. I think it's called Tao for short, but two very strange names. So no wonder he's called Twitter something a little bit odd, because he's got a thing about funny names. Anyway, tweet us. We'll just stick with the old traditional phrase.
It'll always be Twitter, I suppose. Home Office data reveals that since the European Union referendum, there has been an 8-fold increase in the number of asylum seekers being housed in conservative areas, which may make it even worse.
And according to other research, dissatisfaction among the British public at the government's handling of immigration is at its highest level since before the Brexit vote.
Let's look at the figures. 66% of those questioned across England, Scotland and Wales said they are dissatisfied with the way politicians are dealing with this issue.
Well, let's go to former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Are you one of those dissatisfied people? Morning.
Well, knock me down with a feather. The British people are upset that we've got open borders. Extraordinary. And just picking up on Rishi Sunak's comment, the sanctity of our sovereign state has been invaded by these people coming across both illegally and legally. Let's not forget, legal migration is completely out of control. What we were told before Brexit was that we would take control of our borders, that we would have a points-based a skill-based point system, which would allow us to ensure that only skilled people came into the UK. But actually what we've done is completely turn our back on our domestic labour market. We've filled jobs with cheap labour from abroad. We've dumbed down the skills required in order to qualify to come to this country. And we've got completely open border Britain. This is not what people voted for in 2016. It's not good for the economy short term. It's not good for the economy medium or long term. Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt need to get a grip and have a holistic approach to how they deal with our labour market. They just haven't got a clue at the moment.
And meanwhile, this public dissatisfaction really presents a huge opportunity for the Labour Party, with them very much, if you pardon the expression, parking their tanks on traditional right territory, with, you know, Keir Starmer heading off to Europol tomorrow to try and talk to them about beefing up what can be done in the Channel. He's off to, I think it's a conference in Montreal at the end of the week, where he's talking to members of the left there, saying this shouldn't be a right-wing issue. This should be, you know, centre-left as well. And this is a huge challenge for the Conservatives, not only in dealing with it, but in holding on to power.
I mean, Isabel, actually, the Labour Party should have championed this right from the start. The protection and promotion of British labour rights is what they're all about. But, you know, unbridled migration cuts the legs out from underneath the British worker. But it was Tony Blair who took us down this path. And Starmer is the Tony Blair New Labour cut. And, you know, if we think the Conservative Party's been bad, you wait until Labour get in. They will completely throw open the doors if they're not already completely open. So I don't trust anything coming out of Starmer. To the extent that he's saying the right things, it's only to curry favour with the electorate. Once he gets into power, assuming he gets into power, he will be the same as the predecessors we've had, both in the Conservative and Labour Party. They don't have joined up thinking on how to get Britain working again. They will point to low unemployment figures and say, actually, look at that. Haven't we done a good job? But unemployment figures don't pick up all those who are not seeking employment. We have a record 6.2 million people on some shape or form of universal credit. That's double what it was in 2019 and 6 times as much as it was in 2018. The country is simply not working, literally not working.
And when you say that Sunak and Hunt should get a grip of the labour market, what do you mean by that?
Well, they've got to promote policies which encourage people to go back into work. We've got 2.4 million people not even looking for work at the moment. As I mentioned, 6.2 million surviving on a sort of subsistence level. And the most obvious way to do it, the easiest way to do it, is to cut taxes on the working and middle class. The median wage in this country now is just over £30,000 a year. After tax, Eamonn, that's very close to what you can get sort of on benefits without having to lift a finger. And I don't say that in a prejudicial sense. I'm not denigrating those who aren't working. It just simply doesn't make sense at the moment to come into the workforce and be, for example, an ambulance driver. You enter the workforce on about £22,000 a year. The average ambulance driver gets £28,000 a year. Net after tax, that is less than what you get on benefits. Why would you work? We've got to remove the tax burden from the working and middle classes. We've got to stop putting a sticking plaster over our failure to get them working by taking in cheap, unskilled labour. That's what we're doing. We've got to stop it.
Ben Habib, we've got to stop you there. Thank you very much indeed for outlining that. Very crystal clear. Thank you. You heard what Ben Habib has had to say. How are you feeling the tax burden as you get ready for work today and to head out that door? Is it worth your while, really, at the end of the month when you look at how much of your salary is taken away in terms of tax?
And I think I know the answer to this question already, but I'll put it out there anyway. Are you one of the 2/3 of British people who are dissatisfied with the way the government is handling the issue of migration? Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts.
But the Prime Minister keeps saying his Stop the Boats plan is making progress and it's working. But people are finding it very difficult to see how, where, when and why it is doing that. Reminder of our top stories with the time at 6:17.
The parliamentary staffer suspected of spying for Beijing claims he's completely innocent as reports emerge of a whole network of Westminster informants for China.
A new survey reveals dissatisfaction with the government's handling of migration is at its highest level since before the Brexit referendum.
And reality TV stars are descending on Downing Street today to back the government's online safety bill as it's set to go through its final stages in Parliament.
Who are these reality TV stars that are descending?
People like Georgia Harrison, who we interviewed on this programme, who was the victim of revenge porn at the hands of, I want to call him Stephen Bear. Is that
Stephen
his
Bear,
name?
Yeah.
And she bravely spoke to us about the impact that had and how she's actually been a bit of a trailblazer and managed to change the law. We're speaking to Michelle Donlan, who is responsible for the online safety bill, about 1:45 about all of this. I think she's one of the sort of prominent ones. There's a few more minor celebs, but interesting to hear what
Let's just look at these pictures coming into us now, receiving live pictures. This is of the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii, erupting for the 3rd time this year.
If you are listening on the radio, this is really glowing lava, and this particular volcano is famous for that. It's been quiet for 2 months and it's just erupted again. And of course, we'll all be aware that this is just 4 weeks on from those devastating wildfires on the island of Hawaii around Maui, where there was a huge loss of life. At the moment, they're not too concerned about this volcano. It's just absolutely brilliant pictures for us this morning. If you do get a chance to have a look, if you are listening on the radio, do so via our GB News website, which I should point out is the nation's fastest growing news website. Well, all those pictures for you there.
You just look at the state of the world. You look at that volcano erupting there. What has happened in Morocco, which is absolutely devastating, with the amount of people, thousands of people dead because of that earthquake. Libya.
Yes, huge floods, 2,000 dead in Libya.
Greece underwater, Greece under fire.
Wildfires in Hawaii.
So it just goes round the world, these natural disasters. It's all pretty awful. The weather picture, I thought yesterday was supposed to be a scorcher.
Yeah, the last one, bunk off Britain, that didn't happen. Certainly not where we live.
No.
And rather nippy today. Let's have a look at the details.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
You know what it means when it gets cooler? It means the spiders are coming in.
Oh.
And do you know what it means when the spiders are coming in?
What?
They're getting ready to mate inside your house. I read this yesterday. Horny spiders. As if things could not get any worse. I'm horrified.
They're cold and they want someone to cuddle up to.
I didn't know they were coming in for snuggles, adult snuggles. It's not okay.
Coming in for more than
happy.
snuggles by the sounds of it. Paul Coyte's coming in for the sport, and he's going to be here with the latest. The Isle enemy tonight is Scotland against England in Glasgow tonight, the 150th anniversary at Hampden. What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
on this Tuesday morning. A very good morning to you. Here's the news you're waking up to.
Disposable vapes are to be banned in England in a bid to stop children becoming addicted to them. Health ministers say bright packaging and sweet flavours are behind an increasing number of young vapers.
The first Wilko shops will close today as the dramatic collapse of the high street chain unfolds. The retailer will shut the first 24 of nearly 400 shops across the country as 12,500 people will be made redundant.
The GMB union has backed our calls to don't kill cash. They say the disturbing scenes of mass bank closures would put vulnerable people at risk of financial exclusion. The Prime Minister had previously appeared to rule out such a move, insisting it would not be appropriate for the government to start imposing such rules on individual businesses.
5 children who travelled from Britain to Pakistan with Sarah Sharif's father have returned to her grandfather hours after being taken by police. Neighbours said dozens of officers raided the grandfather's house where the children were staying. 10-year-old Sarah was found dead at her family home in Woking in Surrey a day after her father and his partner left England.
And a woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 2-year-old girl was found in a village pond in Hampshire. Police are appealing for information after officers were called to the home of the child in Kingsley following reports that the girl had disappeared.
Now, a match I'm looking forward this evening, and I'm neither English or Scottish, is the Isle enemy against each other at Hampden. Paul Coyte will talk us through this one. This has got a significance. They always have a significance, but this one in terms of the date.
150th. This is the 150th. The 150th game. It's the 150th anniversary. Actually, interesting, the first one was 1872.
You had that one?
I know. I was at the 50th anniversary.
Okay,
I didn't quite. I think you were the one that was at the first one. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and because the significance of it. If you look back, if we go back maybe 30 years or so, the most important thing is that everybody wanted to watch it because it was one of the only live TV games. There was only 2 that used to be on. It used to be the FA Cup final and the England-Scotland game for the home internationals.
3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely right.
Where the Scots would come down and sit on the crossbar at Wembley.
That was 1977, yeah. When they famously beat England 2-1. And pretty much smashed up Wembley celebrating. And there's been so many huge games. Probably the last great one would have been for England, which was Euro 96, Gaza, the moving ball. We can discuss all that a little bit later. But it always is a big game, and also especially the fact that Scotland are playing so well at the moment for the first time. 5 on the trot.
I mean, this is classified as a friendly, but let's face it, there's nothing friendly about this.
Yeah, I think probably less so the fact that it's at Hampden Park. I think it's probably less of a friendly for Scotland. I think it's fair to say that, Scottish fans, than it would be for England. But there's no love lost between the two, of course, and it's been 3 years since the last time.
But are you saying, Paul, you think it matters more to Scotland than it does to England?
You know what? This may be controversial and it may be upsetting people, but I actually do think that's the way. I do think.
Though if England were to lose this, that really is not a good look for them.
No, of course it's not. It's a game that both will want to win. But the whole thing is just to celebrate this 150 years. But it is so much more than a friendly. It's that old phrase, there's no friendlies in football. But in this case, you know, they're going to be going for it. Yeah. They're both going to be going for it.
You've got a special guest, 8:30 this morning.
Yeah, man, that's probably played, I would guess, and I'm trying to look into this, probably played more of those games than any other, and he's played more England games than anybody else. And that's Peter Shilton. He played back in 73 for the 100th anniversary game, which England won, by the way. They called it the Valentine's Day Massacre, when England won 5-0 up there. And he's played in 10 England-Scotland games, and he's going to be with us just after 8 o'clock.
OK, well, we look forward to that. Yeah. Wales doing all right?
Wales doing OK, beat Latvia, but Latvia away in Riga. I don't want to put a dampener on it for Wales, but Latvia really aren't that good. Haven't got a point yet in the European Championship, so all the same, a win's a win. They've got Turkey in their group, they've got Croatia in their group, so that's not going to be easy for Wales, but they've managed to win, so that keeps probably the wolf away from the door as far as Rob Page is concerned. So good win for them.
Paul Pogba might be a bit of a wolf, pumped full of testosterone.
Oh, dear. He's not your he's never been your favourite, has he, Paul Pogba?
I think he's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
Absolutely do. But tell me this, so he's he's showing increased levels of testosterone, not at a normal level.
Yeah, he's failed the drugs test. They often say that with testosterone, and we looked into this when we were talking about boxing a few months ago, it lasts for a certain amount of time. It's foolhardy to be actually in the middle of a season and be taking testosterone. He's still got another test. So there's an A sample, there's a B sample. The A sample's come up positive, which means he's going to be suspended. If the B sample then comes up positive, then that will mean that he can be banned for up to 4 years, take him to 34, which probably means the end of the career. So,
so testosterone's not the worst drug you could be taking, I suppose.
It all depends in what way we're talking.
But it wouldn't be illegal in real life, would it?
No, but it's performance enhancing. You could have it where you could have an illegal drug where a footballer is banned for taking an illegal drug, which would be recreational, but they'd be banned for that. And you think, well, it's hardly performance enhancing, whereas testosterone is.
So how would our performance, if you and me took testosterone, what would it do? Would we grow beards or things?
Well, what would happen is that you would, if maybe we could try this. You would probably grow a beard in the first 5 minutes.
Yes.
All of a sudden, it would be like the Incredible Hulk. It would be. Yeah, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, and all of a sudden everything would start bursting out.
You'd start beating your chest.
I think
You'd be unbearable.
Would that scare you, or
no,
would it?
I'd just find you irritating.
If we were pumped full of testosterone, our attention would be on you.
Oh, gosh.
So it would be.
You know what? I would actually probably be pumping
We'd be pumping our chests.
Anyway, don't do it, kids.
Don't do it.
It's not good.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. See you again 7:20. Thank you very much.
Right, stay with us. In a moment, we'll be going through the papers. We'll be talking about the business secretary, Kemi Badenoch. She says we have to keep engaging with China, irrespective of spies, because we need them to reach net zero targets. Do you agree?
Lot of rubbish.
More on that in Headline Makers.
So we can't make the Mini. We can't make the Mini in Oxford unless the Chinese are involved in it. Why don't you just say, Kemi, we need their... What do they have? What is the Chinese currency?
Yen.
Yen. We need their yen. Lots of yen, that's what we need. I mean, it's completely... Why did they just bother with this? We need them to reach net zero. Why? We don't. Just need all the money that they're going to give and invest in the country and all that sort of thing. Tell the truth. We go to that story and lots more in Headline Makers next. You're watching GB News. And GB News is...
the fastest growing news website. Is that what you're going to say?
Britain's news channel.
Sorry, I thought you were doing the news website,
channel, Isabel.
Please. Oh, of course
Hit
it
the
is.
sting.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 6:34 and it's Tuesday, the 12th of September. Welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
We're going to bring you up to date with some of the top stories this morning, beginning with the parliamentary researcher who's been arrested on suspicion of spying for China. He claims he's completely innocent. Fears are growing of a whole network, though, of Beijing informants at Westminster.
With both legal and illegal migration record highs, dissatisfaction with the government's handling of the issue is now at its highest level since before the Brexit referendum.
And as the controversial online safety bill goes through its final stages, reality TV stars are set to visit Downing Street to support the controversial new regulations.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbnews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews. Lots of you already been in touch this morning. Sandra says, yes, I am very dissatisfied with the government's dealing with immigration, but Labour will be no better. And Phil says, morning, Isabel and Eamonn, I'm fed up with weak leaders. Is there not a person out there that is strong enough to lead this country?
Let's get into the newspapers. Joining us this morning, we've got Dawn Neeson and we've got Fraser Myers. So we say good morning to both of those. Dawn, we go to you, front page of the Telegraph. And this dependence on China, says Kemi Badenoch. Why do we need China?
Well, it's a weird way the Telegraph done this. Obviously, it's following on from the weekend story about the alleged spy, who works as a researcher in Westminster. But the Telegraph have given it the net zero spin, and I'm not quite sure if it works or not. But in any case, the story they've done is basically we cannot afford to cut ties with China, even though they may or may not have spies in Westminster, because we need them to reach net zero. OK, we need them to reach net zero in this country while China are completely ignoring reaching net zero, as they are literally building coal-fired power stations as we speak. But the premise here, basically, is Kemi Badenoch speaking out and saying, basically, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. So it's a complete reverse ferret on what Liz Truss did. We'll remember Liz Truss in her 49 days in office, where she said China were basically the spawn of Satan, we shouldn't trust them. Now the theory is that we do need China, we need to talk to them, we need to be communicating with them.
Well, that's not the American approach to things. America is calling them out and not reliant on them, and they're moving things like Apple factories and whatever into India and taking them.
Yes, no, absolutely. The problem is, and this is mentioned somewhere, and there's thousands of words in this particular story, that try to find anything, certainly a battery that isn't made in China. So you can move the main factory, but most of the components, whether it's Apple or not, Apple batteries are made in China. So there is going to always be this reliance. We cannot ignore, and I sort of agree with this, we can't ignore China. And I personally would rather know what my enemies are up to rather than cut them out.
But do you not think that we're all getting our knickers in a twist about the semantics, the words that we're using to describe them? Why haven't we hauled in the ambassador to have a word about this? Why aren't we talking about possible sanctions for putting spies in our seat of democracy? Why are we absolutely obsessed with whether we use the word a threat or an epoch-defining challenge? It's ridiculous.
Well, these are the kind of things politicians get exercised about, I guess. They will spend, forever compiling new reports on exactly what words used. But I think the general gist of it is true. You know, we do... China is now such a vital part of the world economy. You know, cutting ties with them, it's not just about net zero. I mean, imagine, you know, what that would do to people's living standards. We rely fundamentally on cheap goods that have their origins in China. And that's not necessarily...
You know, Fraser, the only thing I'm going to say about this, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if we were sitting talking about Saudi Arabia, I would have contributors preaching to us about we can't possibly have links with a country as immoral as that and a country that does this behind your back and that. Suddenly, you want to make Saudi Arabia taboo, but everybody's cool with China. Why? Because they're all frightened of China. They're our third biggest trading partner, and we're their, 75th biggest trading partner. We need them, they don't need us.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a, realpolitik element to this. But, somewhere like Saudi Arabia, the fact is we do business with unsavoury regimes. That's a fact of life. Politicians might like to sort of preen about not wanting to, but I don't see that ending anytime soon. That's a sad reality.
I think politicians are a bit short-sighted. Why say something about we need them to be able to hit our net zero targets, which is not always that popular an angle. Why not say we need to keep talking to them because they're talking to Russia? Or, you know, we're helping to maintain peace in Europe by talking to China. That might wash a bit better with the British public.
That's why I think this is a weird take on it, Isabel, linking it into net zero, which in this country isn't a popular thing in any case, when there's so much more going on than the net zero link here.
OK, this is a really disturbing story, Fraser. This is a front page of the Times today. Nearly a third of female surgeons within the NHS have been sexually assaulted. It makes a headline, front page.
So this comes off the back of a very large survey carried out by the GMC or sponsored by the GMC. A huge amount of reports of sexism, ranging from what might seem like the smaller incidents to the most incredibly serious. So it looks as if there's kind of a toxic culture within surgery. I should say, I think that the headline perhaps overstates the case. It's talking about things like sexual banter and things like that are a lot of what feeds into this.
They're
Now,
also
don't get me
talking
wrong,
about
that's
11 rapes.
That's absolutely... Those things are unacceptable in the workplace and is completely...
Or anywhere.
Or anywhere. Or is totally, you know, totally unprofessional and wrong. But, you know, I think the headline implies a level of sort of criminal activity that is perhaps not there in the actual figures, but still a very serious problem.
Is this the same survey, Fraser, that's saying that so many more new doctors are just simply to go abroad for better pay and better conditions?
That's a different survey in a different paper, but that is also clearly a problem. You know, many people who graduate in the UK, they see the NHS, they see the amount of work they have to do, they see the relatively low pay, and they think, well, why not go to Australia? Why not go to
the thing is
US?
with this story, it's a story in The Guardian, it's front page of The Guardian, and it's typical Guardian fare, and it's NHS in crisis part, God knows what we're up to. I feel, as a journalist on national newspapers for nearly 40 years, I feel I've been writing NHS in crisis stories for almost all of that time. But this is our 60% of those trainee young medics who are training at the cost of the NHS. Their average age of 20, they're not satisfied, not at all satisfied with the prospect of working for the NHS. Well, the immediate question is, why are you going into it in the first place? You've just started your training. You're saying, I'm not satisfied. Well, don't go into it in the first place. You know what the NHS is like.
You're young, you're idealistic, you want to change the world, you want to do good, and then you're faced with people who know the price of everything and the value of nothing.
No, I agree with that, and I agree it needs reforming, but this is the very start of it, and we are paying to train these people who have no intention
Well, I
of
think
staying.
that's an issue. I think if we are paying for these people to go through medical school, they should do a certain amount of service for the NHS, because so many of these wonderful, talented, British-trained, best kind of medical training you can get anywhere, are going off to places like Australia and never paying back that loan. Exactly. And then the Australians get the benefit of that wonderful training, and it's a huge loss for us.
But if they were indentured, they had to sign a contract and say, we have to work for the NHS for 7 years, I don't see why that isn't norm.
I think we're all agreed on that. I think they should do, because to go through all this training and starting off with that attitude, well, NHS is a bit rubbish, I don't want to work for it, and then I'm going to Australia as soon as I finish my training, well, I'm sorry.
See, I always thought I would like to have been a doctor.
I'd have loved to have been a doctor too.
But I'm not smart enough. I never thought I was smart enough, really, to do it. And I realise now, funny enough, because I've got so many, I get so many consultations with so many people about what's wrong with me. And you know what? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
They know, and it's not joined up.
Well, actually, there's a story, maybe we can find it later on from one of the later paper reviews, about a woman who had a problem with her child, and she went to some ridiculous number of appointments, like 35 different experts, and nobody could do it. And then she went to ChatGPT, AI, typed in all the different diagnoses, and the bloomin' AI came up with the diagnosis. So maybe you should try that, Eamonn.
That's scary. No, don't ever Google what's wrong with you.
No, ChatGPT
really not a good idea.
is about a doctor than Dr. Google. Is a consultant of Dr. Google.
I've just now got a mental image of Dr. Eamonn looming over me, and so you know.
I think that'd be very good.
He'd have a lovely bedside manner.
I think it all went wrong when they took the white coats away. I actually think a white coat and a stethoscope, I think, would be. I think you need to look authoritative. I genuinely do.
I
think it's ridiculous that people come in and they wear a bin liner.
I think nurses should still wear hats. I thought that was a lovely look.
Oh, matron.
So fetching.
Don't start.
Oh, yeah.
Would you wear a hat in a chip shop and things? Why wouldn't
quite.
you? Well, when you're opening up someone's stomach...
Dinner lady wears one.
Yes.
I always find it funny when you see doctors or surgeons being interviewed on television. They always have to have their stethoscope on them.
Yeah.
I think everyone else just has their job
in
title
their
below.
scrubs.
In their scrubs, yeah.
Which is clearly really unhygienic. Why are you wearing your scrubs in a television studio?
Even if they're being interviewed on a Sunday morning at home and it's a day off, they're wearing their full scrubs with a stethoscope. I'm a doctor.
No, I think worse is politicians that walk into hospital wards with their sleeves rolled up.
They have to do that, apparently, and they have to tuck their tie inside their shirt.
You don't have to do that when you visit a hospital.
But we don't go up to patients and things in the way that they do. But
well, I do. I go into hospital, people immediately. I'm like healing the bedridden.
Well,
whatever.
You're a super spreader.
People want to be touched by me and they think they're going to be healed.
Yeah, and you're killing them.
Did I ever tell you the story
He's the Grim Reaper.
Did I ever tell you the story about Ruth having Jack in the hospital?
Oh, yeah. And you were chatting up the nurse.
I wasn't chatting. There was a queue outside for people to meet me. That's what... And then she went ballistic and she went... But anyway, I was just seeing the afflicted. Are we going to the break?
I don't know. Oh.
Yes, we are going to a break.
On that cheery note.
On that cheery note of
what are we going to be doing after that break?
We're going to be talking to the government about the online safety bill, which is actually really interesting. They've got a whole bunch of razzmatazz showbiz celebrities heading to Downing Street today. But we'll be getting into the serious elements of the law as well after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 6:48. These are your headlines. Disposable vapes are to be banned in England in a bid to stop children becoming addicted to them. Health ministers say bright packaging and sweet flavours are behind an increasing number of young vapers.
The first Wilko shops are going to close today as the dramatic collapse of the long-running high street chain unfolds. The retailer will shut the first of 24 of 400 shops across the country as 12,500 people are made redundant.
The GMB union has backed our call to not kill cash. They say the disturbing scenes of mass bank closures would put vulnerable people at risk of financial exclusion. The Prime Minister had previously appeared to rule out such a move, insisting it would not be appropriate for the government to start imposing such rules on individual businesses.
5 children who travelled from Britain to Pakistan with Sarah Sheriff's father have been returned to her grandfather hours after being taken by police. Neighbours said dozens of officers raided the grandfather's house where the children were staying. 10-year-old Sarah was found dead at the family home in Woking in Surrey a day after her father and his partner left England.
And a woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 2-year-old girl was found dead in a village pond in Hampshire. Police are appealing for information after officers were called to the home of the child in Kingsley following reports that she had disappeared. Well, let's cross now to the Secretary of State for Science, Michelle Donnellan, who joins us live from Westminster. A very good morning to you, Secretary of State. I want to start by talking to you, good morning, about our top story, all eyes on Westminster and concerns around security, particularly in relation to Chinese spies. Your Cabinet colleague, Kemi Badenoch, says that we need China in order to hit our net zero ambitions. Do you agree with that?
Look, China presents a challenge both to our national security but also to our values, and so our approach therefore needs to be one of engagement but also one of robustness, and that's certainly the approach that we've been taking. I think what we're saying is that we can't just be naive, we can't put our head in the sand and wish China away. They are the second largest economy, they have a fifth of the world's entire population, and when it comes to climate change, they're the biggest producer and emitter of carbon dioxide. So we do have to take China seriously, and that's the approach that we've been taking.
Evidence you have given, can you give me some evidence of where we have acted robustly, other than these strong words being used at the G20? It's not exactly going to have China quaking in their boots. Why haven't we summoned the ambassador, for example? Why aren't we talking about sanctions? I mean, the very idea that there could even be, and I quote, a network of Beijing informants in Westminster is outrageous.
Well, yeah, let's go through some of the things that we've done in our approach. So, for instance, we've stripped out Huawei in the 5G network. We've banned TikTok on government devices. We've established a procurement bill, which helps us here. We've had a National Security Act, which gives us more control over our industry. We've cracked down on Chinese investment in our nuclear sector, in our semiconductors. We didn't meet with China at a top level for many years, from 2018, I believe it is, until last week. We're in line with our Five Eyes, if not more forthright in our approach. But as I said, it would be very naive to just pretend that China didn't exist, and it wouldn't be in the interest of British industry, British jobs, tackling climate change, the list goes on.
Colleagues within the Conservative Party feel as though there's been an attempt within Westminster to pretend that the spies don't exist. Why we're only learning about this in August, September, when this happened back in March. And Lindsay Hoyle saying this is because it's an issue of national security. We have a right to know about this, don't we?
Look, when it comes to national security, the sensitive information does have to be released at the appropriate time, especially when live investigations are undergoing.
But do you think that MPs shouldn't be allowed to discuss the details of this case in the Commons?
I think that the Speaker of the House has made a statement on this, because this is a live investigation and we do have to recognise that fact.
And today you want to talk about the online safety bill. I know you've got a whole host of guests arriving at Downing Street. And, of course, we've spoken to Georgia Harrison on this very programme, a bit of a trailblazer in relation to the changes she's managed to make to the legislation. Tell us about the meeting today.
Yes, what we're doing is we're gathering a load of people that are in the public eye that have experienced themselves, or their family have, or their loved ones, online abuse. And they too want to talk about and also raise the profile of this groundbreaking piece of legislation. And what this piece of legislation is going to do is it's going to make the UK the safest place in the world to be online. That's quite staggering, not just for children, but for adults too, because we are making sure that illegal content is got rid of as part of our triple shield. The second shield is making sure that platforms actually enforce their terms and conditions, so you know what you're going to get when you sign up to one of these platforms, and they can't treat different groups differently. And thirdly, that we're empowering adults to have more control over the content they see. But when it comes to children, parents across the country can be reassured that actually we are taking a zero tolerance approach.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed. Michelle Donnellan is the Secretary for Innovation, Science and Technology, talking to us live there from Westminster. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Back here in the studio, we've got Fraser and we've got Dawn. What do you think about what she's saying there, Fraser, either on China or online safety?
I find it very chilling to hear the words that Britain is going to be the safest place to be online. I imagine where's currently the safest place to be online? Probably North Korea or China. This is a bill for quite an extreme amount of online censorship. And everything that's already illegal in the real world is also illegal online. I mean, people... I think there's around 9 people who are arrested every single day already for what they say on the internet. It's not clear why we need new laws. We should probably be repealing the existing laws that we have that are actually, you know, quite serious, quite a threat to free speech. So, yeah, it worries me deeply, this online safety bill.
The one thing I do think is that platforms should be more responsible for enforcing regulations themselves, because, you know, they say we will protect your privacy, etc., etc., and we know that doesn't happen. And I think, I mean, Isabel, you're a mum. I think certainly with youngsters concerned, I mean, platforms are very, very lax about who they're allowed to do what. I think that's it. But I agree with Fraser. I think the censorship element makes me slightly twitchy, but I think platforms being made to be responsible for looking after certainly youngsters online.
It's become such a huge piece of legislation. There's so much that falls under it. I mean, the NSPCC have called it a landmark piece of legislation and they praise a lot of the work that's gone into it. But then there's all these concerns around ending encryption and what that means in terms of, you know, will that increase hacking? Will that increase... it's called the Snoopers Charter, because arguably people could then read WhatsApp messages. It has implications for all of us.
Exactly. So firms like WhatsApp and Signal, who run these kind of messaging apps, they say, well, you know, the government essentially wants to have their way in to look at our messages. And they say, well, if we create a backdoor for the good guys, even if you assume the government is good, it's not always good, actually, but if we create a backdoor in for the good guys, that creates a backdoor in for the bad guys too. So is it going to make us safer online? Certainly not in that respect. It exposes us to many dangers.
Cool. Fraser, Dawn, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Chilling. Just a chill went down my spine when I thought the idea of anybody reading Isabel's WhatsApp message.
To you.
What they would find out. What they would find out. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to go to the weather now. Alex Burkill with that.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost, perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you for your views so far this morning. Lots of them coming in. John says Labour's answer to solving the immigration crisis is to process them faster and to open up safe routes, which everybody knows many more will come. And the question I would ask Labour is, where are they going to house them if they don't want to put them on barges and in hotels? Well, we've got Justin Madders from the Labour Party coming on in just a moment, so we'll put that question to him.
Can't wait. No. Here's something much more important.
Yeah.
Right, did you realise, you know when you get sort of happy hours in pubs and things like that?
I love a happy hour.
Well, I'm sure you do, where the prices are less. Well, actually, at peak times in pubs, you're charged more, right? So that it tends to be that if you're coming out of work or whatever, the prices will be higher than they would be like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's like these false sales, furniture sales. You're actually just buying them at an inflated price apart from during the sales.
I didn't know that.
It's a scam.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Scam. Absolutely outrageous.
Let us know your thoughts on that.
Anyway, we're going to take the break, and at 7 o'clock, we're going to have lots more from you right after this. We don't go, there is no break apparently. Well, it's all new, it's all different. So there is no break. It is now 7 o'clock. Good morning. Tuesday, the 12th of September. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The parliamentary researcher arrested on suspicion of spying for China claims he's completely innocent as fears grow of a whole network of Beijing informants in Westminster.
With net migration,
real fears here that this parliamentary researcher who's been arrested may only be the first of several people who could potentially be working for the Chinese state in this building behind me, and also anger among a lot of MPs that they were not told about this arrest back in March and only found out about it in the Sunday papers.
With net migration and illegal crossings at record highs, dissatisfaction with the government's handling of immigration control is now at its highest level since before Brexit.
Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, has branded the government's so-called levelling up policy as a sham and a scam. We'll be speaking to her minister in the next few minutes.
Levelling up. How do you think it works out? Do you think it exists? Do you think it's working? What honest efforts are being made in a levelling up process? So if you're north-south, I mean, we talk about levelling up, but I suppose everybody's got to level up with London. I suppose it's London,
if that's possible, when we're this huge metropolis.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter if you live in Portsmouth, it doesn't matter if you live in Norwich, it doesn't matter if you live in Leeds, wherever, or Carlisle. Are you being levelled up, or is it all just London, 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 as far as you think?
Well, what we can do is level up the weather and get a proper forecast for all of those places mentioned by Eamonn with Alex Burkill.
Good morning. A bit of rain around today, and it will feel cooler than of late too. I'll have more details later.
Thank you. Hail, rain or snow, Paul Coyte will be here with the sport.
Always. 150th anniversary game between England and Scotland, which should be a friendly, although it's never going to be very friendly between the two old enemies. And also there's a World Cup winner who's failed a drugs test, and it could be the end of his career.
Oh, OK, my friend, keep us posted. As always, we'll share what you have to say at gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews. Our top story this morning, questions have been raised over the UK's China policy after a British parliamentary researcher was arrested on suspicion of spying for them.
This comes as the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, claims we cannot afford to cut ties with China and insisted that a row over spying should not result in a breaking of ties with Beijing.
Rishi Sunak has told the House of Commons that the sanctity of Westminster must be protected following these events, with the parliamentary researcher denying all allegations.
Well, our political correspondent Catherine Forster is in Westminster for us with all the developments, and this is a story that just keeps growing and growing, Catherine.
Yes, indeed. Real concern now amongst Conservative MPs and certain security sources too, that there may in fact be other people working in that building behind me, ostensibly on behalf of MPs and of the government, who are actually working for the Chinese state. And of course, if that turns out to be the case, this man at the moment that was arrested in March hasn't been charged as yet, it's worth saying. But it wouldn't be the first time that China has gone about interfering in our affairs. Let's have a look.
The idea that China may have recruited a British national to work as a spy may come as a shock, but it's not entirely a new thing. Back in 2020, 3 journalists were expelled from the UK for allegedly working as Chinese agents while posing for one of the country's press agencies. Meanwhile, MI5 issued a rare security alert last year, warning that this woman, Christine Lee, is a spy. Lee rejected the accusation and in July this year launched legal action. Former Minister Sir Ian Duncan-Smith claims that ministerial cars may well have been tracked by the Chinese government, and UK ministers have been banned from using TikTok, a social media platform being run by a Chinese company and was deemed a risk to security. But it's not only China that poses a challenge in the human intelligence wars. In March last year, the UK, together with the US and other allies, exposed historic cyber hacking by Russia's Federal Security Service, which replaced the KGB. Meanwhile, back in February, a British embassy security guard was jailed for spying for Russia.
So the government continuing to insist that China is a challenge, not wanting to deem it a threat, despite plenty of evidence, some would say, that in fact it is a threat. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, in the House of Commons yesterday did say that there was a strong case, he thought, for putting China on an enhanced tier of what they call the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. If they go ahead and do that, that would mean that China was designated a potential risk to UK safety and interests. And what it would mean would be that anybody working for the Chinese government or working for Chinese-owned state companies would have to declare that interest and would have to say specifically what they were doing. The consequence of not doing that could potentially be 5 years in jail. So we will wait to see if that happens. But of course, the government in the meantime, people like the Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch yesterday, Michelle Donnellan, the Science Secretary, just on this programme a little bit earlier, stressing our economic ties with China. It's the world's second biggest economy. We do a huge amount of business with them. Also, they've invested vast amounts of money in British companies, in infrastructure. Now, sure, we're rowing back on that a little bit now, but the fact is simply that China is the world's second superpower, and we cannot afford to cut links, and that wouldn't be possible even if we wanted to. Now, we've got lots of things that Britain is unhappy about in terms of China, the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims, their behaviour in Hong Kong, the noises they're making about Taiwan, and also, of course, COVID. We know it came from China. We perhaps will never know whether it did in fact come out of a wet market or whether it came out of a laboratory. But the cold, hard truth is that China is too big and too powerful and too influential for us to have as much influence as we like. And we can talk tough, but the reality is that we will have to continue to do business with them.
Speaking of talking tough, Catherine, we've just heard from the Office for National Statistics about the latest unemployment figures, and the government will have a bit of explaining to do. It's risen again for the second month in a row. It was 4.2% last month. It's now gone up to 4.3% in the 3 months to July. Bad news for them.
Yes, bad news for the government. Of course, we are now probably a year, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more from the next general election. The government to have any chance of winning at all, and the bookies say they've got a very, very small chance at the moment, to have any chance, they really need to turn the economy round. They need to show results. And quickly now. OK, inflation is coming down a little bit. It's still very high. Costs are not falling, they're just rising less fast. And, you know, the economy is growing slightly. OK, it's turned out with those revised figures from the ONS in the last week or two that we're actually on a par and even better in terms of coming out of the pandemic than many of our neighbours. But unless people feel better off, you know, why would they vote for the government that's been in power for 13 years? So the fact that the employment figures seem to be heading in the wrong direction, yes, the government is going to have some explaining to do, and it's more bad news for them at a time that basically they came back to Westminster just over a week ago. We've had the concrete crisis, we've had prisoners escaping, you know, we've now got this row with a possible Chinese spy. So the government really needs some good news, and good news at the moment seems to be very thin on the ground.
OK, thanks, Catherine. We're going to hear from the opposition now. We go to Justin Matters, appropriately enough. Justin is the Shadow Minister for Business, Employment Rights and Levelling Up, and he joins us this morning from Ellesmere Port. Justin, you're just probably hearing that breaking news coming in, that the unemployment rate is edging up, and the pace of wage growth is outstripping the rate of inflation as well. Be interested in how you interpret that.
Well, look, I think we know that the economy's been struggling for some time, hasn't it? So I think we've all been fearing that unemployment was going to rise. We know that there are strong economic headwinds that have been troubling the economy for some time. But I think one of the things we're very clear about is the only way we are going to get out of this mess we've been in really for 13 years now with stagnant growth is to actually turbocharge that and get us to be the highest economic growth in the G7. And that is going to be a huge task, but that is the only way we're going to get more money in people's pockets, better job security and a thriving economy for everyone.
I just want to know what your position would be regarding China. And we've heard Kemi Badenoch talking about we can't afford not to suck up to China, basically. Do you think we can afford, if there's a spine ride going on, to cut links with China, or have you got to be economically sensible on this?
Well, look, I don't think you should suck up to them or completely ignore them. You can't ignore them. They're a massive part of this economy, whether we like it or not. There's 140,000 Chinese students here. We have £100 billion worth of trade. So we have to have open dialogue with them. That doesn't mean that we should not be robust with them when it's required, whether it's on human rights abuses, whether it's on security concerns. But we've also got to work with them on issues of global concerns such as climate change. So, yeah, we challenge them when we have concerns, but to just completely ignore them, I think, would be the wrong move.
On this issue, then, you're exactly the same as the government, as on so many issues these days. Just yesterday, Keir Starmer also saying he agrees with Rishi Sunak. He would call them a challenge, not a threat.
Well, I think that calling people we've got long-standing and deep economic trading partnerships with, and calling them a threat is not a very constructive way to Well, okay. Look, I think that it's right to say that there are concerns about security. That's been very clear from the news that's come out in the last 48 hours. We absolutely have to robustly challenge them over that, but we can't ignore them. We have to continue dealing with them. They're going to be a big part of the 21st century. There's no doubt about that. If we want to tackle climate change, if we want to continue to see our economy grow, we will have to deal with them. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept that some of the things that they do are consistent with our values.
I want to get your view. Your boss, Angela Rayner, she says the government's levelling up programme, it's a sham, it's a scam. Do you see any evidence that people are trying sincerely and honestly to level up the country?
I see very, very little evidence of that. Look, levelling up, I think we can all see now, was something that was dreamed up ahead of the 2019 general election. It sounds like a good idea in theory. It's absolutely desperately needed. But what we have seen since then is a series of competitions and bidding rounds where parts of the country have been pitted against one another to get scraps of government cash, which, by the way, is a drop in the ocean compared to what they've taken away from local councils over recent years. It's a gimmick. It's got no substance to it. We absolutely agree that the whole country should be levelled up to the same standards, but I think the way that the government go about it is dripping with insincerity.
On a minute, you're talking to us from Ellesmere Port, where we've had this wonderful Vauxhall news in the last few days. That's job creation. We're seeing job creation in Oxford as well. All sorts of parts of the country outside of London under this government are beginning to creep back towards growth.
Well, I mean, we have had a car plant here for nearly 60 years now, so it probably wouldn't be right just to put all the credit in the government store for that. But look, we're very proud of the electric vehicles that we are now producing at the plant. We want to be building more of them, but we absolutely are aware that the car industry in the UK is on a precipice. We need to get more gigafactories in the UK. We need to sort out our rules of origin and deal with the EU. There are lots of warning signs that the UK car industry needs far greater strategic direction from the government, and at the moment, I'm afraid we're not getting enough of that.
Definitely. As Angela Rayner says, you think levelling up, good intentions, what we were all wanting to hear, but a sham and a scam.
Absolutely. Well, I think if you ask anyone who is in part of the country that is supposed to be part of this levelling up policy, whether actually they feel levelled up, whether they feel that they've got more money in the pocket, whether they've got more opportunities, whether they see their high streets thriving and bustling, I think most people will see that after 13 years of Tory government that things are actually going backwards rather than forwards, and that levelling up is simply a cheap slogan with no substance.
On the high street, that's a whole other question. Justin, got to leave it there. Justin Matters is the Shadow Minister for Business, Employment Rights and Levelling Up. He's speaking to us from Ellesmere Port this morning. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Right, the time is now 7:15. Time to go through the latest sports news. 7 o'clock tonight. The coverage begins of the Isle enemy, Scotland against England, Hampden Park.
Absolutely.
Tonight. And they call it a friendly.
Yeah, it's not going to be very friendly, is it? I don't think it's going to be a very friendly atmosphere. I was looking back at some of the games. So there's been 115 games over the years, going back to 1872. Two of the big ones, back in April 1967, the result was England 2. This was at Wembley, England 2, Scotland 3. But Scotland, if you can think of the year that it was and when it was...
What, Dennis Law would have been there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
April 67, but who had won the World Cup?
Oh, England.
Just a few months before that.
Yeah.
So, therefore, Scotland treated it like a heavyweight boxing competition where they can come back and say, therefore, we are now the world champions because we beat them.
I miss the home internationals. So
do I.
And, you know, it was a big thing for whoever your team, whether it's Wales, whether it's Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, whatever. And I miss that rivalry. But obviously... the sponsors have deemed there's not enough money in it and we should go and play, the international team should play friendlies elsewhere and whatever. But my goodness me, when you go back and you're whetting my appetite and you're looking at the amazing players that, you know, Scotland would have had, the Billy Bremners, the Eddie Greys, Jimmy Johnson, you know, all the cream of the people who they were cultivating at Rangers and Celtic and
and Leeds, and if you think of the Leeds side of Manchester United, and there were so many great Scottish players, and obviously things have changed over the years. Although things are turning again, and Scotland are looking very good. You know,
I don't know how they're looking good, because when you look at the Premier League teams, they're taking players from Peru and Chile and Romania and Portugal and wherever. You're not getting the homegrown players. They're not getting the chance, or they're turning away from playing professional football.
Sure, I mean, you've got your Andy Robertson, Scott McTominay, of course, playing at United, John McGinn, Kieran Tierney. So there seems to be more. It's like a new crop that are coming through.
I love this. I mean, I really do rate Scott McTominay, but he can't hold a place at Man United.
Sure.
You know, he hasn't got a place at Man United. So they're not being given the chance in their domestic leagues.
It's true, but let's be honest, there's a lot of club sides, which has changed over the years, that are probably better than the national sides.
Yes.
You know, it's fair to say. I mean, you've got great talent with England, but how would England fare against Manchester City? I know this, we can say that because they're foreign players. But all the same, it's going to be terrific. It's the Saturday, it's those old Saturday games, and I mentioned that earlier. There was only 2 live games that were on the TV. It used to be the FA Cup final, and it was the England-Scotland game on the Saturday. That was why everybody talked about it. So hopefully there's going to be more interest today. You know, the other interesting thing, Eamonn, and I don't know whether Isabel knew this as well, about different players who have then changed allegiances. Because if you're a young player, the chances are...
they're born in one country and they play for another.
The chances are you probably start out and think, now, what's the chances of me playing for England? Probably unlikely. I do have a Scottish grandmother, so therefore I could do that. And there's loads. There's Elliot Anderson, young 20-year-old Newcastle player, who's born in England, grandmother's Scottish, so he played for England at a young age, then moved to Scotland. It is now thinking, there's a chance I can get to England now. So he's now left the camp, whereas he was going to play.
Well, Jack Tartan was the master of that.
He was, of course he was.
So
you think of the Republic of Ireland, everybody.
You just have to have, an Irish great-great-grandparent or whatever, and you were in there.
Yeah.
But there was that big row about Declan Rice, who was... he had played for Ireland at junior level.
That's right.
And then he chose England.
But he's English. It's because his grandparents are Irish.
Yes.
But the other, you've got Matty Cash, who plays for Poland because his grandparents are Polish. And then the other, you got Erling Haaland, I guess, could play for England because he was born over here. The other one is Evan Ferguson. Now, Evan Ferguson, who plays for Brighton.
I think he's very good.
He's a terrific player. And he's Irish, born in Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, the chances are, because his mother is English, this is going the other way, whereas thinking, well, maybe I could play for England. I can't see that happening.
I think a player like Evan would be a superstar in Ireland, where he's hardly going to get picked for England. As long as Harry Kane's there, he's not going to get picked.
Exactly. Just got to keep your options open in these situations.
Some really good...
But it will be a terrific game. It will be a terrific game.
It will be. OK. Anything else you want to tell me about?
Well, we've got Peter Shilton coming up. Peter Shilton's going to join us in about an hour's time. I believe he must have played more England-Scotland games than anybody else, more England games. And he played in the 100th anniversary game, which would have been 50 years ago, which they call the St Valentine's Day Massacre, which was up at Hampden, and England won 5-0. So I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about that.
Everybody, I hate to say this, guys, but everybody, let's just say, raised their game against England, the other home nations. Poor England. Because everybody wanted to beat them. And, when I think of Northern Ireland, the Derek...
Everybody hates us, Simon.
Georgie Best in a Northern Ireland shirt, just amazing. But anyway, that's TV coverage begins at 7 o'clock tonight.
It is.
On Channel 4.
There's one more game. It was 9-3. That was the biggest one.
9-3.
Was England won 9-3. And there was a guy called Frank Haffey. He was the Celtic goalkeeper. Let 9 in against England, which means he's never going to be forgiven. And they'd even had this joke. They'd say, what's the time? They'd say nearly 10 past Haffey because he nearly let 10 in. It wasn't his fault. He had to go into hiding and he had to move to Australia.
Oh, gosh.
So you don't want to be doing that.
Fault.
It wasn't his fault.
Adamant.
It was the defence in front of him was terrible.
It's like if the weather's bad today, we're not going to blame Alex Burkle.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost, perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning. But then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:27. We've been breaking those figures on unemployment this morning, up from 4.2 to 4.3% for last month. But there has been a wage growth. It's outstripped inflation. And the Chancellor has been speaking about that in the last few moments. He says it's heartening to see the number of employees on payroll is still close to record highs and that our unemployment rate remains below many of our international peers. So he's trying to put a bit of a gloss on what essentially is bad news there. But when it comes to wage growth,
in restaurants and things.
Wage growth remains high, he says, partly reflecting one-off payments to public sector workers. But for real wages to grow sustainably, we must stick to our plan to halve inflation. But we are seeing wage growth at 7.8%, and we know that inflation is, what is it, around 6%, something like that, 6.5%. So there is some good news in there, but unemployment has gone up again.
OK, so a group of MPs say low-achieving pupils should be banned from taking a student loan. Anyway, and now they're coming up with this bright idea that they should have apprenticeships instead of what are termed Mickey Mouse degrees.
And this bright idea is coming from?
The New Conservatives. It's a lobby group calling for the number of students on these courses to be cut. Have they got a point? Are Mickey Mouse degrees getting out of control, and are you paying for them?
Yeah, or is this actually cruel, reduces education, crushes dreams? Is it no more than an economic exercise?
Let's find out. Here's Nick Hillman and Leah Nietzsche, who join us. Oh, Leah, you don't look too happy. What's wrong with you? What's wrong? Is this really annoying you, this whole these Mickey Mouse degrees?
No, what
what annoys me is that the headlines about banning people from doing degrees, what this is about is making sure that our degrees stay high quality, academic, and we get people into apprenticeships and technical qualifications. We've known for more than 2 decades that we've got skills mismatches across our country. Employers are desperate to employ people locally. And we're talking about levelling up. Actually, levelling up isn't just about investing in our town centres. It's investing in our local people, local businesses, so we can actually have healthy town centres around the country because we've got more money in them rather than them all going to university cities.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I do think that makes sense, what you've said there, and it's less extreme sort of what. But although I am looking at some of these degrees, and although I respect anyone's right to study what they want and whatever if they're offered, hand embroidery at the University for Creative
Wonderful
Arts.
Thing. Do you need
What
a
is
degree in it?
What is it?
Well, it's embroidery that you do by your hand as opposed to through a machine, sewing machine.
And you need to get a degree in that.
No, well, I know, yeah, that's the madness. I mean, it's probably quite an artisanal skill that, you know,
but why is there a degree in it? But anyway, Nick Hillman thinks it's all mad. Nick, tell us, you're the director for the Higher Education Policy Institute. Give us your view on all of this.
Well, look, I welcome all interesting reports, and Leah's report is an interesting one. But one thing I find rather strange about it is it says that a whole load of people who currently are not good enough to go to university should stop going to university, and they should be doing apprenticeships instead. But if apprenticeships are so wonderful...
Internet.
Just that it's not that we didn't want to hear what he had to say, or that we were gagging him there, but have we got him back? No, not got him back. So Leah, basically, do you think the way this report that you put together, there are a lot of things here which I think are worthwhile. There's a brewing and distilling degree. There is a dairy herding degree, you know, for farming and things like that. So, I mean, some of these, we can see how these things are practical. It's, you know, I always go back to this mantra from Blair: education, education, education. What the heck was that all about?
But this is the issue that
was she gone too?
Am I still there?
You're there, Leah, yes.
Good, OK. The issue we've got, you know, I've worked in higher education, further education for 22 years before I became an MP. And I was a lecturer when Tony Blair brought in this strapline education, education, education. What that actually did was cause the problems that we've got now. Because what happened is that government funding actually encouraged more people to go to universities. So universities were very clever, and colleges offering HE were very clever. What they did was they all went running for the money and invented lots of new different courses. Many were of very low quality, and actually, as Nick has already said, you don't need to have, and you've said, you don't need to have a degree to do these kind of jobs. And actually what employers want are people to be actually working. You can still get a degree apprenticeship and have no debt and earn while you're learning as well. That's what we want to do. We want to change policy to be able to divert people into those higher quality courses and work.
That's the key, earn while you learn. So you actually see apprenticeships as still education. I think this has become a binary discussion that
we're all agreed
in education
on that.
and apprenticeship isn't, which is ridiculous. It's about reframing the whole thing so that somebody who wants to be a beautician isn't made to feel like a second-class.
Well, wasn't it a problem, though, Nick, that we've got you back now, that universities, so that polytechnics became universities when they obviously weren't universities? They had a role and a justifiable role within society, but they were suddenly all upgraded.
Well, I don't particularly agree with that. I mean, in other countries, they call these sorts of institutions universities. I don't really mind that they're called universities. And actually, most of them do still deliver a huge amount of vocational and technical education. And most of those degree courses are regulated by the professional bodies for each sector. So one of the things I don't like about this report is it does seem to want to go back to a sort of sheep and goats binary type divide, divide. And I think different educational routes should be open to everybody. But of course, bad quality courses should not exist. They should be rooted out by the regulators, and good quality apprenticeships should be thriving. But not every young person is right for an apprenticeship, because not every young person knows what career they want to go into yet. And you've got to know that, because an apprenticeship is basically a job with some training and education attached to it.
Is there a concern, though, that if they do get rid of these Mickey Mouse so-called degrees, that some of these universities just won't be able to balance the books, that they're actually, frankly, just a cash cow in order to fund some of the more serious research and you know, meaningful degrees? And that to you, Nick.
Well, actually, universities are already making a deficit in many cases. And actually, because tuition fees haven't gone up very much in recent years, most universities make a loss on their home students, which is why they're having to recruit so many international students who pay the much higher fees. So the problem with Mickey Mouse degrees is nobody likes Mickey Mouse degrees, but nobody's absolutely certain what a Mickey Mouse degree is. You know, as the conversation between the two of you a moment ago on hand embroidery showed, actually, we want a strong creative arts sector.
Absolutely.
You know, nursing's a low-paid career, so by some measures, nursing would count as a Mickey Mouse degree, but it jolly well isn't. So the difficulty is not no one likes Mickey Mouse degrees, but the problem is no one can agree on what they are.
Well, can you agree on what they are, Leah? Is it obvious to you what they are?
Well, it is obvious. I mean, I've worked in the sector for a long time. You know, when we look at the figures, 40% of people who are studying or have studied at university don't go into high-quality professional jobs. That is the role of university courses. That's what they should be doing. There's no point in us costing the taxpayer billions of pounds per year, and the majority of student loans are never paid back. So we've got hundreds of billions of pounds of taxpayers' money that's never going to see the light of day being repaid. Well, what the policies we've got at the moment are doing are incentivising people staying in low-paid jobs so they don't pay them back. And the jobs we do need, like NHS doctors, surgeons, engineers, who are highly paid, tend to pay back their student loans more quickly. So actually what we're doing is we're penalising the people who are going to university to do the jobs we actually need, and not diverting people into those jobs where university might be a nice thing to do for 3 years, but actually is the taxpayer's job to pay for our young people to do some nice things for 3 years before they go into a low-paid job.
Well, Leah, we have to leave it there. Nick, thank you very much as well. I wish we had longer, folks, and maybe we're all a bit clearer as to what a Mickey Mouse degree is after all of that, and do we need them? Thank you both. Thank you both. Look at that one.
Stand-up comedy. Do you know, though, comedians are the cleverest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, but why do you need to do a degree in learning how to be funny?
I object to the definition of a Mickey Mouse. I thought she was saying there that actually it's people who end up with high-earning jobs, but that doesn't include nurses or whatever else. You know, they aren't high. I don't think it should be defined by the income. I think it should be defined by the value it brings society or whatever. Oh, that we could have so much more on that debate.
But you know, someone learning how to be a comedian, there's nothing as unfunny as somebody who's not funny and standing there saying, I know how to do this.
You could try and teach me how to be a comedian all day long. I still couldn't be a comedian. I'm funny unintentionally, never deliberately.
You're not particularly good on the punchlines, are you?
No, I'm dreadful.
Or the timing.
Absolutely dreadful.
But besides that, you know, there we go. Still to come, experts are warning of an invasion of spiders. Not just spiders, but...
sex-crazed spiders.
Spiders, yeah. Well, talking about that next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's bring you up to date news-wise. This is what's happening. Disposable vapes are to be banned in England in a bid to stop children becoming addicted. Health ministers say bright packaging and sweet flavours are behind an increasing number of young vapers.
The first Wilko shops will close today as the dramatic collapse of the long-running high street chain is unfolding. The retailer will shut the first 24 of nearly 400 shops across the UK as 12,500 people are being made redundant.
One of Britain's largest trade unions is calling on the right to use cash to be enshrined in law. The GMB union is echoing the demand of our GB News campaign to not kill cash, saying there are real and disturbing consequences to high street bank closures.
5 children who travelled from the UK to Pakistan with Sarah Sharif's father have been returned to her grandfather hours after being taken by police. Neighbours said dozens of officers raided the grandfather's house where the children were staying. 10-year-old Sarah was found dead at her family home in Woking in Surrey, a day after her father and his partner left the UK.
A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 2-year-old girl was found in a village pond in Hampshire. Police are appealing for information after officers were called to the home of the child in Kingsley following reports that the girl had disappeared.
Welcome back. We are going through the papers, taking a look at what is making the headlines, and we're doing that this morning in the company of Dawn Newsom and Fraser Myers. Welcome back to both of you. Dawn,
yes,
take us to Richmond and Newham.
Why wouldn't you want to go to Richmond?
So these are in London.
Exactly.
This is in London.
Yeah, this is in London, the London boroughs of Richmond and Newham, and they are scrapping free residential parking permits for electric and hybrid cars. And Kirklees in West Yorkshire are also starting to charge this month. And be careful, because it's going to spread everywhere, isn't it? They've decided that basically they're strapped for cash, these councils. They need to make more money. This is a way of doing it.
Well, there's not enough electric cars for them to make any money.
Well, yeah, well, they say it's a good few £100,000, and we know, Birmingham Council's just gone bankrupt, so it is our...
But then tell me, what is the incentive for any of us to buy an electric car?
Oh, Eamonn, you've got to the actual point of this story straight away. But exactly that. It is like, what is the point? Electric cars are very, very expensive, OK? You can't charge them up. Even in big cities like London, they're very hard to find charging places. Or even where I live in Tower Hamlets, which is next to Newham, we've got 2 electric car charging points near us, and they're in a bus gate. So you have to drive through a bus gate to get a £60 fine to get to the electric car charging point, and they're always busy. So you can't charge them up. They're very expensive, and now you don't even get free parking. So what is the point? Now,
well, I suppose fans of them would say they're better for the planet.
Yeah, but if...
Well, not better for me.
No, exactly.
Might be better for the planet, but, you know, why am I paying a £60 fine through the...
Exactly. Most people can't afford to buy an electric car in any case. I mean, I don't drive because I do live in London. I'm lucky enough to have good public transport and I can walk away. But that's very rare. If you live anywhere, even remotely, sort of like on the outskirts of London, you don't have good public transport. You do need a car. But electric cars are so expensive still. And things like this are just not going to encourage people to do their bit by saving the planet by buying them, are they? I mean, that was the whole point of having the free parking in the first place. But they need the money. Makes you wonder how much of this net zero drive to green with the whole ULEZ thing as well is just about making money.
Well, it also makes you wonder how many more councils are going to be insolvent. I feel like this could be the big ongoing story of the next year, especially in the run-up to an election. I think, you know, Birmingham, the biggest council in Europe.
Absolutely.
It's just this sort of snowball effect.
I mean, obviously there's a historic thing there with the equal pay thing, but I mean, you know, it's not the only one. Other councils have already gone bust.
So we go to the Independent, and Fraser, you've got quite a disturbing medical consequence of whether you are a day person or a night person, an evening person or a night owl.
Yeah, so this huge study of over 60,000 women in America, I assume the results apply similarly to men, has found that if you are an evening person, then you're significantly more likely to develop diabetes. They sort people into what they call chronotypes, so it's an official thing, whether you're an evening person or a morning person.
What are you?
Even accounting for... I'm an evening person.
Oh, dear.
Even despite how sprightly I look right now, I'm not a morning person. And they looked at this and they said, even accounting for all kinds of other lifestyle factors, that has a big impact on diabetes. And in some ways, it's not surprising, because if you stay up late, you're probably more likely to be drinking, you eat less healthily, you know... If you
move less.
Move less. You essentially you're probably I don't know. People who get up early probably have a better sense of routine, plan things a bit better, probably plan their meals and have a better control over their diet. So it kind of makes sense.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm a complete lark. I can get up at 3 o'clock every morning, so it's a good job. My name's
good job.
Dawn, isn't it?
yeah, perfect. Eamonn, what are you?
Well, oddly enough, Isabel, we live in a twilight zone.
We're neither one nor the other.
Somewhere. Autumn approaching.
Oh, right, this is the story of the day for me.
Right, OK, go on ahead.
Right, this is the horny, flipping spiders.
I love this story.
Sex-crazed spiders
Sex-crazed
in the Mail.
I love this headline. It's perfect headline. This is, Daily Mail online. Sex-crazed spiders are going to be invading your homes this autumn. Oh, don't you like spiders?
I don't like spiders, and I certainly don't like the thought of them coming inside to make babies in my house.
Well, they're coming, and they have lots of babies in one go, Isabel. Lots of babies, and they're tiny. Right, OK, so basically September, October is the breeding season for most of the spiders that are native to this country, and they like to, have their spider grown-up cuddles in the warm and the dry, and why wouldn't they? So they're all coming into, the male spiders in particular think, right, we're going to go inside, meet some lady spiders where it's warm and dry, and have baby spiders. So that's the basic story here, which is lovely. But they've also linked it into the front page of the Daily Star today, which is here come the red fire ants. So, you know, it's creepy crawlers from hell. Eamon's looking at me weird. So we are now going to be invaded not by spiders, who are doing grown-up spider things in your home, but also Asian hornets are going to be on the way, as well as the red fire ants.
Well, how are these getting in then?
Well, because this is climate change, Isabel.
They're
because
just
we're
breeding.
not driving electric cars anymore, obviously, so it's all our fault. So, yeah, the red fire ants are coming over from the continent. They're getting in here, I don't know, probably on
illegally.
boats across the channel.
The hornets came on a banana boat. They came on bananas.
They're all coming across the channel. I'm blaming the French.
Right, OK. Ed Sheeran. So he likes a wedding or two.
Yeah, so he's posted this video on Instagram where he has essentially crashed a couple's wedding and starts sort of serenading the pair of them at the moment just before they get married. I personally would probably be a bit annoyed by this.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting overshadowed by a big celebrity on your big day. But then again, maybe if I was the bloke, I would try and pretend that I'd actually arranged the whole thing.
Yes.
Because the problem is he looks really surprised and fidgety about it. Whereas if you
But what if Ed walked in and you didn't know who Ed was?
A younger celebrity, who's been around for ages.
Globally, one of the biggest selling artists, and up there, top 5 or something. But I agree with you, Fraser. It's not all about you, Ed.
Yeah.
This is their special moment. This is the vows.
And the thing is, what a surprise. He actually managed to serenade this couple. This was one of the little white wedding chapels in Las Vegas, and they happen to be a British couple as well, which is very handy because everyone in Britain knows who Ed Sheeran is. And he happens to serenade them with the new single off his latest album. I mean, what were the chances? But, you know, to be fair to Ed Sheeran, he does this a lot, doesn't he? Like, when he's on tour, he goes to local schools. I mean, he's either very, very caring or he's actually very, very up on what makes a very good publicity stunt. This is not an Instagram feed, by the way. Ed's put this out himself.
This is a window on my life, you know. I can't go to a hotel where someone doesn't come up and tap me on the shoulder and say, my daughter's getting married in the next room. You know, you wouldn't go in and see them and whatever. To the point where I got a phone call from a dear friend 2 weeks ago, whose wedding I was going to, and he said to me, we don't just want you to go to the wedding, we want you to conduct the ceremony.
Oh, my Lord.
Indeed, that's what I thought as well. So I've buried George Best, right? So his family phoned me and said, we don't want a priest or anything, but we want you to do George's funeral ceremony. And now I'm going to marry Charlie Lawson, Jim McDonald from Coronation Street. Yeah. Oh. So there you are. I should maybe become some sort of preacher.
Yeah,
or...
You also did a tribute at Alison Hammond's mum's funeral, didn't you, as well?
Oh, but yes, but it was a reading. Yeah.
You're available for hire.
I'm available for hire. I seem to have
There's a seamless link here, though. So you buried George Best. I went on honeymoon with George Best. Whoa.
Tell me more.
Oh, yes.
Well, which one of his weddings were? Which one of his
wives? It was when he married Alex.
Right.
And, yeah, I was working for a newspaper and we were doing the story.
Were you an unwelcome guest?
No. I was invited. I actually sat on the beach watching, in Mauritius, sat on the beach watching the sunrise with George Best.
Oh, sadly missed.
Much sadly missed. It was actually absolutely charming, Eamonn. Very
it's coming up to an anniversary this month, 60 years since George made his debut for Man U. There you go.
Yeah. Should we talk about Kylie Minogue?
Oh, yeah.
She's age-defying, isn't she?
I think she makes a very good point here. She's talking about people to just shut up talking about age, isn't she?
She is, yeah. The point of this story, this is our, it's in on the Standard Online, I think it is. She's given an interview. Her new single, lots of music links, called Padam Padam, has been a viral success on TikTok. And Kylie is saying, well, I'm a bit surprised because TikTok is for young people, and they seem to like it. Therefore, she is assuming that ageism really isn't that important anymore. However, I do beg to differ. Kylie is 55 years old. She's had a 35-year career.
55?
Yeah, I know. But that's the point, Eamonn. She doesn't look it. She's always this little princess of pop, isn't she? She doesn't look old. And she goes, well, ageism isn't cool, but I think it's on the way out. And I actually, speaking of someone who's slightly older than Kylie, beg to differ there. because I think it's actually getting worse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I obviously don't look like Kylie Minogue. If you're listening on radio, I really don't look like Kylie Minogue. But if I had £1 for everyone that said, "Oh, Matt, I'm dressed up as lamb," and that is, well, they might have a point. But,
They do not.
Is this on your social media?
Common, yeah. That is increasingly
Well, yeah, but
common.
social media is not normal life.
But you know what, Isabel? It's from other women as well.
Yeah, yeah. Jealous?
That's what it is.
Oh, thank
you.
you.
look like a supermodel, and
thank you.
No, I'm not having that.
Well,
That's outrageous.
The thing about you make an effort, and so many people don't make an effort. I was watching something on Instagram last night about a woman walking through a town centre, and she was really beautifully coiffured and dressed and whatever, and they were just showing everybody turning their heads. But you want to see how everyone else was dressed. It really was, yeah.
I just think I'm old school, Eamonn. News flaws.
Well, you're
smartly.
top
Flawless
school.
with it.
Top of the class. Here's Alex Burkle.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost, perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
We were just continuing that discussion with our columnists here about ageism, and Fraser is only 30 years of age. Your child.
32.
Your little bones are hardly formed, you know. So, I mean, honestly, when you look at that, he is a baby, isn't he?
Is,
You do think of that?
Right, yeah.
No, but.
I've been married 37 years. He could actually be my baby. Fraser, that's so wrong.
You know, I think it just shouldn't be an issue. I just think we shouldn't even, mention ages.
Okay.
Well, anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll be back at the top of the 8 o'clock with all the day's news. See you in a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 12th of September. Good morning. You are tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news on this Tuesday morning, the parliamentary researcher arrested on suspicion of spying for China claims he's completely innocent as fears grow of a whole network of Beijing informants at Westminster.
With net migration and illegal crossings at record highs, dissatisfaction with the government's handling of the immigration control is now at its highest level since before the Brexit referendum.
And we'll be bringing you the latest weather updates. Alex Burkle on the ball.
Good morning. A bit of rain around today and it will feel cooler than of late too. I'll have more details later.
And you'll be in very safe hands with Paul Coit today, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Tell everybody why.
Almost as much as a Scottish goalkeeper from the 1970s. A little slippery. 150th anniversary of England versus Scotland. They play tonight at Hampden, and the man that's played in more of those games than anybody, the legendary Peter Shilton, is going to be with us in about 20 minutes.
Absolutely brilliant. Good to be able to talk to Shilts. And the thing is, imagine being in Glasgow tonight, nice summer's night, Tuesday night, nothing else to do. What a match to see.
Lovely, friendly atmosphere between two fans. Who could want for anything more?
And they'll all leave.
Maybe some of our viewers are going. Let us know if you are. We want to hear from you on any of the topics we're covering this morning. GBnews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBnews.
Now, the top story we're going to talk about this morning is this whole spy situation, as whether there is infiltration at Westminster or not, and if there are Chinese spies there, what are they getting out of being involved at the heart of our government?
Yeah, and questions have been raised now over the UK's China policy after that British parliamentary researcher was arrested on suspicion of spying for Beijing.
Mm-hmm. Now, this comes as the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch. She says Britain cannot afford to cut ties with China because they make the batteries for the cars that she wants churned out in Oxford at the moment. So it's a bit of a dilemma.
Yes, indeed. And the Prime Minister has told the House of Commons that the sanctity of Westminster must be protected following these events, with the parliamentary researcher in question strenuously denying all allegations. OK, well, let's cross live now to Westminster. Political editor Christopher Hope is there this morning. Chris, bring us up to date. Good morning.
Morning, Eamonn. Yeah, well, there's lots of talk today about how big is this so-called Westminster cell that was led by Ian Duncan-Smith, the chief China hawk in the House of Commons yesterday. But I understand from senior figures close to these 20 or so Tory MPs who are very concerned about China, there won't be any attempt to name this individual in the House of Commons today. It has caused a lot of concern, the fact the Speaker said that they can't name them because many think that the name is out there on the internet. It's named by a national newspaper yesterday. Why can't that name be out there so everyone can take measures to try and deal with that threat? But in fact, I think there'll be no attempt to name him today in the Commons. There's a feeling now that justice must take its course. But there's also a feeling about why the US other authorities are much tougher cracking down on Chinese infiltration, I should say alleged infiltration. Of course, the individual denies it in this case, and whether this may lead to a further review of security measures within Parliament behind me.
What is your reading of that? I mean, is it because, I suppose, to a certain extent, you know, America, for example, is just frankly a bigger economy. It can afford to be a bit tougher with China. Why have we been so sort of lukewarm or mealy-mouthed in all of this?
I think, Isabel, often the law has been found wanting. They've tried to modernise the law, make it easier to try and prosecute people who are trying to get involved with our democratic processes. They're often just having an arrest and it's happened before in the past with other people linked to Parliament, has sent a message, as the state might think of it, a message to China saying, we know what you're up to, we will limit this person's behaviour. Some are saying the timing of the leak to the Sunday Times this weekend, just as Rishi Sunak was about to meet with the Chinese Premier. I was with him in Delhi when all this story broke. It broke about an hour or two before he met him. Whether that was an attempt by people in the UK to try and put pressure on the Prime Minister and people around him not to be so close and to China. So I think there's lots of things, tectonic plates moving below the waterline in Westminster today, Isabel.
We spoke to the government earlier about this issue and indeed the shadow cabinet. Let's take a listen to what they had to say and then get some analysis from you after that.
China presents a challenge both to our national security but also to our values, and so our approach therefore needs to be one of engagement but also one of robustness, and that's certainly the approach that we've been taking. We've cracked down on Chinese investment in our nuclear sector, in our semiconductors. We didn't meet with China at a top level for many years, from 2018 I believe it is until last week. We're in line with our Five Eyes, if not more forthright in our approach. But as I said, you know, it would be very naive to just pretend that China didn't exist, and it wouldn't be in the interest of British industry, British jobs, tackling climate change. The list goes on.
I don't think you should suck up to them or completely ignore them. You can't ignore them. They're a massive part of this economy, whether we like it or not. There's 140,000 Chinese students here. We have £100 billion worth of trade, so we have to have open dialogue with them. That doesn't mean that we should not be robust with them when it's required, whether it's on human rights abuses, whether it's on security concerns. But we've also got to work with them on issues of global concerns such as climate change. So, yeah, we challenge them when we have concerns, but to just completely ignore them, I think, would be the wrong move.
To say then, Christopher, just another issue that there isn't much difference between the two parties on.
Yeah, you heard Michelle Donnellan there first, and then Justin Madders. That's Conservative and then Labour politicians. The Tory government, of course, trying to say there's a thin line here to walk, which we heard from Rishi Sunak and people around him. They're saying you can't ignore China, the scale of its economic involvement, the fact that it's making the batteries for this big investment in the mini plant at Cowley in Oxford yesterday, and that's why you've got to talk to China. You can't just ignore them and hope they go away and try and build almost a great wall of China around them, so we can't talk to them. That's the point of Mr. Sunak, and they're trying to bring back to where they were under David Cameron and George Osborne. Of course, it went the other way under Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, much more sceptic about the China. But of course, Labour will say, well, why are we doing this, and raise concerns, because it can do in opposition. I just wonder whether, if the party gets into power next year, which is likely according to the polls, it may change its position.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on now to talk about a survey, the satisfaction amongst the public at the government's handling of immigration. The thing is that this dissatisfaction is at its highest level since before Brexit. And so why is that? 2/3 of people across England, Scotland and Wales said they are dissatisfied with the way politicians in charge are dealing with migration. The Immigration Attitudes Tracker survey has been responsible for this. The level is at its highest it's been since 2015 when the survey began, and the latest figure is up from a low of 41% in 2020.
And on party lines, Labour supporters, almost 3/4, 73% are dissatisfied. And for 82% of dissatisfied Conservative supporters, they say the government's not doing enough to stop the Channel migrant crossings. And this is really a huge opportunity for the Labour Party, because you can see now that, Labour voters are as concerned about this as those on the right. And this doesn't really fit along those traditional party lines. But the situation has got such, so much concern now from the public with the cost of these hotels day after day, costing millions of pounds of taxpayers' money. So something has to be done.
The thing is, your views very much contribute to this one, and we'll try and talk about this before we go off air this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBNews.
OK, with the time at 9 minutes past 8, let's give you an update on today's headlines. And disposable vapes are to be banned in England in a bid to stop children becoming addicted to them. Health ministers say bright packaging and sweet flavours are behind an increasing number of young vapers.
The Wilko situation. The first shops will close today as the collapse of the long-running high street chain unfolds. They will shut the first of 24 shops. These are 24 of nearly 400 in total across Britain, as thousands of people will also be made redundant.
The GMB union has backed our Don't Kill Cash campaign. They say the disturbing scenes of mass bank closures would put vulnerable people at risk of financial exclusion. The Prime Minister previously appeared to rule out such a move, insisting it would not be appropriate for the government to start imposing such rules on individual businesses.
5 children who travelled from Britain to Pakistan with Sarah Sharif's father have been returned to her grandfather hours after being taken by police. Neighbours said dozens of officers raided the grandfather's house where the children were staying. 10-year-old Sarah was found dead at her family home in Woking in Surrey a day after her father and his partner left England.
And a woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 2-year-old girl was found dead in a village pond in Hampshire. Police are appealing for information after officers were called to the home of the child in Kingsley following reports that the little girl had disappeared.
We're just getting pictures in of Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes in the world. These are very, very disturbing, especially all that Hawaii has been through recently. It had paused erupting for 2 months, but the lava is really spectacular. I mean, these are live pictures coming in.
Yeah, and if you're listening on the radio, what is so spectacular about this, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, is that the lava genuinely glows. Obviously, the temperatures there are absolutely huge and quite spectacular. We're told at the moment there isn't any sort of threat to life, which will be a relief to the inhabitants of the island, just 4 weeks on from those devastating wildfires that affected the people of Maui so badly. The observatory said gases being released by the eruption will cause volcanic smog, though, downwind of Kilauea, and people are being told they should avoid the national park. But at the moment, no threat to life.
This is on the Big Island in Hawaii, and you can actually view this. I mean, imagine what that must be like. I remember once I had to film. I was brought by helicopter to the rim of a volcano.
Oh.
Didn't like that.
No, I don't like that.
Didn't
either.
like that. A lot of hot air blowing up, and you could feel your eyebrows singeing and bits of you curling up and whatever it is. But absolutely incredible. But then also you look at things like Pompeii and how these bodies have been preserved when the lava
I do
came down.
find them absolutely fascinating volcanoes, and my children do as well. It's something really sort of childlike about our imaginations that we all really enjoy seeing them, and sort of the way that the lava just destroys everything in its wake.
Yeah.
I went to Cotopaxi in Ecuador That's a live volcano. It wasn't erupting at the time, but it's that sense of insecurity. Like, could this be a terrible decision?
Yeah, well, you see yourself as so insignificant, don't you, really?
Yeah.
But it's like all these occurrences that are happening around the world, that terrible earthquake in Morocco, what is going on in Greece with either flooding or fires and throughout much of Europe and whatever. It's the world seems an angry place and a dangerous place at the moment. Let's hope the weather's calmer than all of that. Alex Burkhill with the picture.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
We were previewing the Scottish-England encounter, the Oil Enemies, as they're called, Hampden Park, tonight. That match is on the telly from 7 o'clock tonight. But still to come, don't go anywhere. You'll be in very, very safe hands. Not only me, not only Paul Coyte, but the most capped goalkeeper England have ever had, Peter Shilton, after this.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're in the Isle enemy mood, and we're building it up ahead of the big match tonight at Hampden. So, Paul Coit has called in his connections. Who have you got for us?
Well, I tell you who I've got. I've gone in, so 150th anniversary then of England versus Scotland. So that's tonight. The 100th anniversary game then obviously was 50 years ago. Man that played in that game and also played more games for England than anybody else. More caps than anybody else.
He played 50 years ago.
He did play 50
What
years
age is he,
ago.
190 or what?
Well, you know what? It's actually his birthday on Sunday.
What? Well, he must have been like 5.
I think he probably was. And he
During-
still
during
looks the
that game.
same.
Who
Shall we
is
say
it?
hello? The great Peter Shotton. Morning, Peter. Happy birthday for Sunday. I wasn't
Morning,
going to forget
Eamonn.
it.
Morning, Chilts. Very good to see you. What do you remember about Isle enemy games? What do you remember about them? I mean, were they vicious? Were they competitive, to say the least?
Both of those, I think. It was they're incredible matches to play in. You know, in that era, especially because there was obviously the terracing, and you'd get, you know, sometimes 100,000 at Hampden, and a lot of British players at clubs then, and the atmosphere. You know, if you lost the game, you'd take stick throughout the season until you played them again. So there was always a lot riding on it.
Peter, do you think that maybe the feeling is not there that it used to be? Because we were saying earlier it was always the game on TV, wasn't it? We used to get the FA Cup final at England-Scotland every year, and everybody waited for those games. So now do you think it might have lessened a little bit?
Do you think it matters more to Scotland than England?
Oh, I think so. I don't know about you, Peter.
Well, no, I mean, it was always a big game for the English lads as well, you know, but I think it was just the era. You know, you'd got a lot of British players at clubs, and now, obviously, there's a lot more foreign players in, but certainly for the fans, there's always a lot of rivalry there, definitely.
Peter, who did you see in front of your goals in your 6-yard area or whatever that you thought, danger man?
Well, quite a few, actually. But, yeah, I mean, obviously, I remember in 73, I just got in the England team, and it was at Wembley, and we were winning 1-0 with 10 minutes to go. And I remember Kenny Dalglish, great Scotland striker. You've got the picture of the save, and I managed to get across and palm it away. And, we won 1-0, and we got great players like Bobby Moore in that match. So it really cemented me in the England team. But I think Dalglish was certainly one of Scotland's great strikers. And funny enough, Ali McCoist always used to get a few chances when I played against him.
Ali McCoist was very good looking when he was young. You know, he even appeared in films.
Did he really?
He did.
What's happened then? He just doesn't seem to have it anymore. Do you, Ali? I've got to say, 73, that game, and it was known and still is, Peter, and I think everybody north of the border would like to forget it, the St Valentine's Day Massacre, wasn't it? And I know it was Bobby Moore's 100th appearance as well.
Yeah. You know, it's always great to beat them at Wembley, but the Hampden games were special as well, you know, and over the years, you know, without sounding big-headed, I had some pretty good games against Scotland.
11. It was 11.
11 games, yeah. Always fantastic, especially at Wembley. You used to go on the coach to the game, and you'd go past some of the public houses or pubs on the way, and of course there was a massive Scottish fans there with the kilts on, come down from Scotland the day before, and as our team coach go by, they'd all do moonies and things like that. So it was quite funny at the time. You know, they would just so against the England team.
Did you do them back though, Peter? This is the thing. I don't think you get away with it these days. But would you do them back again out the coach window?
No, I think yeah, we were quite diplomatic.
Of course you were.
So, Peter, what way do you see the game going tonight? It's billed as a friendly. England fresh out against Ukraine the other day. It was a pretty ordinary draw, I thought that really was. But Scotland, as you were saying, Paul, earlier, playing very well.
They are 5 on the trot, 1-5 on the trot. It's not going to be a walkover for anybody.
How do you see it, Peter?
I think England are a better team, but I think you're right. Scotland are. You know, they've got the system, a settled team now. They start from a solid base. What I mean is they have 3 at the back, I think, 4 in midfield, and 1 up front, and they can defend really well and go from there. So, you know, I don't think it's going to be an easy match for England, but I do think I've always fancied England against Scotland because I think we've got better players.
Listen, I've got one more I've got to ask you, Peter. 125 caps for England. I always want to know, do you actually get 125 caps? Do they arrive in the post? Do they hand it to you? And where are they? Because I've always...
Why aren't you wearing one?
I know. Where are they now? You got one there, but do you have 125?
No. You get caps in the old days, and then sometimes at World Cups you get 1 cap with all the names on. But, you know, in that era, I used to put them in bin liners and put them in my loft because you didn't know where else to put them. No, I mean, over the years, I've given them away and you know, sort of let them go because memorabilia's very big. And I think, you know, it's one of those situations where you don't want them hanging around the house for obvious reasons, you know. And it's very difficult just to shove them in a bank vault, you know.
Peter, I think Gareth Southgate's got a big problem. If England qualify for the Euro finals, do you play Jordan Henderson? Would you have Harry Maguire in front of you? Would you be confident with Harry Maguire in front of you? And I say that only out of concern, I suppose, as a Man United fan. But the lad is not getting game time, really.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I mean, obviously, Gareth is known as a loyal manager, but I think when players are not playing regularly over a period of time, they're bound to lose that bit of edge, you know. And I think if it stays the same, you know, I think it'd be very difficult, you know, I think it'd be difficult to play Jordan Henderson anyway. The level he's playing at is not obviously the level of the Premier League. I think Maguire, you know, if he's not playing in the team regularly, I think it would be difficult to play him at the end of the season in a big tournament like that.
Interesting. Score tonight?
Always fancy England, so I'm not going to say Scotland are going to win, but I'm going to say 2-0 to England. But I never get it right anyway, so as long as we win, I'm not too bothered.
So not the 5-0, not the 9-3... No. Conservative 2-0. I'd take it. I don't think north of the border they will, Peter.
I think a 2-2 draw.
Do you really?
Unless Harry Kane's in real good form, and then there's just no stopping.
He's always on good form.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Peter.
Yeah, there we go.
I think we need to bounce back from the other day a little bit. It was a bit dull, as Eamonn said. It was one of those matches against Ukraine that, you know, I think we weren't really at it. So I think the lads will be ready tonight.
Well, no friendlies in football, and there certainly won't be one with it.
OK. Shilts, pleasure, absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time today. We really appreciate that.
Nice to speak to you both.
OK, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that gets us all excited for the big game.
I know, I'm all revved up. I'm ready. I can have a kick around in the car park.
Very good. You fancy coming round my house later?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we might do that.
Well, who are you going to support, though? Oh, don't
Just the
ask
winner.
me that.
Just the
don't
winner.
ask me that
He's
question.
He's a glory hunter.
Well, I think if you're Celtic, you've got to stay with the Celtic team.
Fair enough. All right. So England then.
But I'm not one of these people that's anti-England, not at all. Because, I mean, if you support, you know, if you cheer these people, these players in the Premier League every week, I don't think you can then turn right and pretend you sort of can't stand England or whatever. But I think in this case, I'd like to see Scotland do
OK, fair enough. That makes it even. Not on
We're
the
all
fence.
friends.
Never on the fence.
We'll not fall out over that.
You say that. Still to come on the programme, lots more for you, including would you eat this burger if it was made for you by a prisoner? We debate whether prisoners should be given jobs while serving time next.
Well, it doesn't mean that they've spat in it, does it? But, you know, it's just made by somebody who happens to be in jail. Hamburglers.
Oh, very good.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Isabel has an important announcement to make.
What's that? About McDonald's? Yeah, they're being served. Come on, Autocue, what are they being served? Can't make an announcement. Autocue's
Could be served
We're talking about
hamburgers.
prisoners today, and a number of prisoners are being able to serve burgers in McDonald's, and we're asking this morning, would you want to eat one or not?
Well, Why has there to be a question, would you want to eat one? As if they've got their fingers stuck up their nose all the time or something.
Well, actually, you say that. I once interviewed a prisoner who said that in the kitchen, sometimes they'd lace the mashed potato with razors for their fellow inmates. Because there was all that drama going on.
Okay,
but I
just
don't
be careful when you bite into
there.
that Big Mac then.
Winston Davies knows what it's like behind bars. He joins us this morning, as does Liz Brewer, to debate this issue. Welcome to both of you. Winston, am I right? There's some of that dodgy stuff goes on in prisons, doesn't it?
I think dodgy stuff goes on anywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, but prison particularly?
No, if we're going to colour them with a brush because you're in prison, you're going to do something bad to food. Don't think so.
No.
I think like the likelihood of there being a problem at McDonald's being served burgers and fries, really, really low chance of something happening there.
But Liz, what's your objection to this?
What, putting razor blades into...
No, just to prisoners being allowed to work in kitchens.
I have to tell you, I think one of the problems that we're discussing today is why it doesn't seem to be working on average. And I had a wonderful chat with Winston outside. I've learnt a lot about prisons. And, you know, I feel it's all to do with the rehabilitation. If you're going to have people inside, it's a punishment. They've got to be punished. And there are apparently different levels. When you go to jail, you're on this level, which is pretty ghastly, until you do what you're supposed to be doing and you get into a better level. It's to do with education in prison, which is going to change their attitude when they come out. And there needs to be the programmes whereby whether they're serving hamburgers in McDonald's or cutting keys in Timpson's, where I do know 10% of their employees are actually...
He is the most amazing man.
Isn't he fantastic?
He is incredible.
What he's done? Incredible.
And he deliberately, as you say, 10% of his employers are reformed prisoners, and he gives them a chance in life again, which I think is very, very important.
That's right. But what I've learnt inside is that, you know, you have, what is it, 18, 20 hours a day, Winston, whatever it is?
20 hours,
20
hours
a day when you are by yourself and you have time to contemplate, and it's during those hours.
Okay.
You'd think they'd go mad, but they don't. You've got time to think.
A lot of them find religion.
They do indeed, and that's good for when they come out, but also when they're there to do programmes which are concentrating on re-education so they have something to do when they come out.
Being given a chance to work in a McDonald's kitchen, I thought, would do, Winston. Yeah. Do you think it serves any purpose, any value?
Yeah, 100%. It just gives them an opportunity to reintegrate with society. Maybe that's not going to be the job they want to do when they get out, but it's just a fact of interacting with members of the public. That's part of it. And you know, this article sort of insinuating they shouldn't be working at McDonald's. They shouldn't be allowed to, you know, walk back to the prison. That's the whole point of rehabilitation. What this article's not doing, the bigger thing of, it's not rehabilitating the more serious people that are doing longer sentences. Liz was talking about the different levels. You go from category A through to B, C and D. At the moment, you've got to do tick box exercises to get through these different levels, but there's such a backlog on the courses that people are being left to do 4, 5, 6 years in prison and then let out with no rehabilitation and no reintegration. No, it's not just a shame, it's a danger.
Yeah.
It
leads to reoffending, frankly, because there's no other way to make money once they're back on the outside.
Yeah, and they're going to be your neighbours, they're going to be in the car park next to you. Do you know what I mean? That's a problem.
Reoffending and lack of staff. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You've got
This is Wandsworth all over.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And not only that, yes, probably there were a couple of people inside. How did the guy get out with a nice bag and food?
Well, there weren't enough people to supervise.
No. So there you've got another problem. In some of these areas in our country today, we've got to start thinking about how we're going to start training more police, more prison workers, people in those prime jobs who are going to keep this country
But do you think in all of this, Winston, we also need to rehabilitate non-prisoners to be more accepting of people who've made mistakes? You know, yes, you go to prison, you serve your time. Once you've served your time, if you've got a new skill, it should be a clean slate.
Well,
we should be able
you're
to
a successful businessman.
Yeah.
Do you ever get, when people, if it was to come up in conversation that you've been inside, does it change people's attitude towards you?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Listen, even coming on shows like this, is a risk to me that the clients are going to think, oh, gosh, I didn't know that he's been in prison before and I don't want to work with him. Yeah. But actually, do you know what? I find that more people actually respect the fact that I've gone out, retrained, learned. This is 15 years ago, that I've built a business, that I'm working hard, contributing back, paying taxes, employing people. More people actually value that than what they, what they're talking about saying 15 years ago.
Wisdom, you go back into the prisons and you are teaching the these kids, and that you're actually doing what you didn't realise it was when you spoke to me. You're doing energy work with them. You're going in, as you said, this last couple of days, you'd lost a friend and you didn't feel like doing it. So you went in there and you said, hey, guys, I don't feel like doing this programme today, so I'm going to go out again. I'm going to come in and you're all going to cheer me. So you immediately got that energy on your side. What you've got in exactly the same way when I met you, you know, half an hour ago, whatever, and you come in and you say, so, hello, you know, I'm Winston. It's energy, and it's that energy, and it's changing people's energy so that you are teaching them and realising this guy's been through this. This guy, look at him today, he's successful, he's married, great guy. You know, and you didn't have any problem introducing yourself to me and telling me you'd been inside.
No, of course
We had
not.
a great conversation.
Of course not, because it's the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not proud of what happened before. I'm not proud of that whole process, but I'm proud of where I've got to today. And listen, the prison service, if they're watching anywhere, contact me and get me in to come and do more work here. Because it's important.
Yeah.
It's important.
Well, yes. Princess of Wales, she's a patron, isn't she, of the Forward Trust, and they're the nation's leading charity that talks about all of the issues that lead so many people to go to prison, whether it's drug or alcohol misuse or just basic petty crime. But I do really, really believe that rehabilitation is such a worthwhile thing. If I didn't have so much work to do, I feel like I would like to go and do some of that as well.
The right people working in jails who understand that and encourage it. You know?
You're still against people being let out in day release to make McDonald's burgers.
I'm afraid I am. I think if they're going to do something, I think it should be done inside, and there should be jobs created inside, or it has to go to an area where you can intermingle with people, but not the general public.
Liz, thank you.
Because you don't know what's going to happen.
Winston, great success story. Absolutely very good.
Uplifting.
Glad to see the benefit of all of that, and lovely talking to you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz, as well.
Thank you. Now, have I just got smaller than you in this chair? I think I'm sinking down. I think definitely.
Shall I lower my chair?
What?
Don't know where the thingy is. There we go.
Because then
sorted.
you hit the floor. Very good. Let's bring you up to date news-wise. Here's what's happening with the time at. I'd love to tell you the time, but the clock's gone off.
It's 8:40.
8:40. Disposable vapes are to be banned in England in a bid to stop children becoming addicted. Health ministers say bright packaging and sweet flavours are behind increasing numbers of young vapers.
The first Wilko shops will close today as the dramatic collapse of the long-running high street chain unfolds. The retailer will shut the first 24 of nearly 400 shops across the UK as 12,500 people are made redundant.
The GMB union has backed our calls to don't kill cash. They say the disturbing scenes of mass bank closures would put vulnerable people at risk. The Prime Minister has previously appeared to rule out such a move, insisting it would not be appropriate for the government to start imposing such rules on individual business.
5 children who travelled from the UK to Pakistan with Sarah Sharif's father have been returned to her grandfather hours after being taken by police. Neighbours said dozens of officers raided the grandfather's house where the children were staying. 10-year-old Sarah was found dead at her family home in Woking in Surrey a day after her father and his partner left the UK.
A woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 2-year-old girl was found in a village pond in Hampshire. Police are appealing for information after officers were called to the home of the child in Kingsley. That followed reports that the girl had disappeared.
We're going through the papers this morning in the company of the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Newsom, and Fraser Myers, deputy editor at Spiked. And Fraser, I want to start with you. It's a story that is still making lots of front pages this morning. We did a debate on this yesterday, whether or not these XL bully dogs should be banned or not. And there's been a big interview with the girl who herself was attacked, luckily survived, but she's saying she would like the owner of the dog to be imprisoned, and she thinks that the dog should be destroyed.
Have we got a Daily Mail's front page, the Daily Mail?
Somewhere over there, yeah.
It's a really harrowing interview. You know, she's talking about the amount of pain she was in, having to essentially 2 men having to beat off the dog, and then they've been injured as well. You know, these dogs seemingly are incredibly dangerous. There's a new story every week about them attacking or mauling someone. It's been a couple of months since a young child was killed by an American bully, XL. And And obviously, so understandably, there are calls for something to be done legally. I think the issue is that the Dangerous Dogs Act, the piece of legislation that we use to regulate these kinds of dogs, is famously one of the worst pieces of legislation that has ever been implemented. It has just failed spectacularly. I think, you know...
In what way?
The number of dog attacks, the number of fatal dog attacks has increased massively since the Act came in.
The thing that I find unbelievable about this legislation is that they record the amount of attacks, but they don't record the breed of the dog, which sort of defeats the purpose.
And the point of the legislation is to be sort of breed specific and to say that there are these certain breeds that should be banned. I think that kind of makes sense. The RSPCA take a very different line, though. They say that it's not about the breed, it's about the owner. I think when you see a pattern like this with these XL bully dogs, and I mean, you know, why have they given that name?
A lot of this is about money. Then somebody creates this breed, and then they become desirable. And when they become desirable, they become valuable, and then there's more of them bred and that sort of thing. So no need for them. Shouldn't be there.
I'm just amazed the government's acting so slowly on this. I mean, how many more people need to be attacked? How many more dogs? Apparently, they killed 1 dog a day, this particular breed, in the month of July alone. So people who come out as sort of animal loving, it's actually affecting other dogs, not just us.
American bully dogs are accountable for 73% of dog attacks since 2022. And there's not actually that many of them. I was interviewing a leading dog behaviourist, I didn't even know that was a thing, last week, called Stan Rawlinson.
It's a big thing. It's a very important thing. Actually, between dogs that are sick and behaving in the wrong way, and you get someone to let them behave in the right way.
He shot me, Eamonn, because he actually said, and he loves dogs, he's behaviourist, he studies dogs, he helps people train their dogs, and he actually said that these dogs are intrinsically evil and nobody should be allowed to own them.
Well, I heard this moron on the radio this morning on my way into work, and he was sitting talking about, he was saying, yeah, but don't you understand, the bulldog, was a traditional British dog.
Not the British bulldog.
But it doesn't matter if it is or isn't. If it kills people, it shouldn't be there. I don't care how traditional it is. It was traditional, it kills people. So
I heard that as well, yeah.
Yes, anyway. Right, OK, so that's that. Dawn, Daily Express, Britain deal with France to end the Channel crossings can never work. It can never achieve its aim. This is in the Daily Express.
This is the Daily Express exclusive. It's one of their big sellers every time they do a migration story. Why UK's £480 million deal to stop the boats is doomed, and it features a group of off-duty French police officers in a bar having a nice time. So I feel a bit sorry for them because they are off duty. So they've done a 2-week, the Express done a 2-week probe into what the hell is going on with all the money, bearing in mind only recently, we're still due to hand over 467 million in the next 3 years to encourage the French to stop the people trafficking, basically. That's what you need to stop. This isn't about the migrants. This is about people who are making huge amounts of money out of the misery of these people coming across the Channel. But they've got an interview at the Express. They've got an interview with our a off-duty police, French police officer saying, it's not our job to stop the boats. I let a family go. They wanted to leave, and that touched my heart. Now, I get where he's coming from, but it is their duty. The problem with the French is, as soon as those boats are in the water, they refuse to stop them. But there have also been reports, and this paper covers it, of them standing on the beaches and watching the boats leave and not stopping them.
Although just yesterday, 2 asylum seekers were convicted, weren't they, for assaulting French gendarmes who were working at our behest and had stones and whatever knows what thrown at them as these guys were boarding onto one of these boats and leaving French waters. So they are trying, and then they're getting assaulted.
Some of them are trying, but we have given the French millions over the years, and the situation is getting worse.
And ministers were put under pressure on that front by interviewers. So you've gone to the Telegraph front page there. You've got the former Conservative minister, Rory, what's his name?
Rory Stewart.
Rory Stewart, talking about the pressures on politicians.
Yes, so he's around promoting his memoirs, we should say, and he's saying that, you know, the pressure on MPs has become intolerable. On the one hand, he says that there's almost too much pressure on MPs, but then he also says that Parliament is not a serious place and that he felt that, you know, he was much more important before he became an MP, and people stopped taking him seriously and treated him like a child. He said he felt creepy having to tell David Cameron that he had brilliant policies and things like that all the time, having to sort of suck up to the boss. So it's quite a sort of wide-ranging and strange interview. I don't think it makes Rory Stewart look great. I think he wants us to both feel sorry for him for being simultaneously under too much pressure, having too much work, and at the same time feeling like a bit of a nobody. He kind of admits that he didn't really achieve anything while he's an MP, and then blames that on the system.
I mean, he sat down with our Gloria De Piero here at GB News, and I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if he was trying to get a sympathy vote. I think he was trying to highlight what a horrible job it is being an MP, and how actually it's a very weird system once you become a minister, that you have to toe the party line even. And this is why so many of these MPs actually are feeling suicidal. A lot of them having to vote for things that they actually really don't believe in.
Day after day we have to interview ministers and you think, well, you don't obviously believe that. And it's a nonsense. And I think where Rory Stewart is absolutely right. The system sucks. The system is ridiculous. The system does not work, and we stick to this antiquated system. And then listening to that Egypt Sunak talking about the sanctity of Parliament. I just couldn't get over that with him talking about that yesterday.
I think you've got to strike a balance, because I'm sure that in one sense we would probably like some more independent-minded MPs. But on the other hand, when most of us vote in a general election, we're thinking about the party. And we're thinking about the government or the opposition. And so we do sort of expect, if MPs are going to deviate significantly from essentially the manifesto...
You want a joined-up policy, then? You want joined-up thinking?
Yeah, I think someone like Rory Stewart... I mean, there's other comments he makes. He says that, he doesn't like the way that ministers are selected. He seems to think they should be sort of hired from the private sector, a bit like they do in America. Again, that feels like, to me... slightly, I think his track record is fairly, anti-democratic. We do at least know that ministers are accountable for all their other problems.
Even if they're inexperienced. I mean, there is a big argument for technocrats, people who actually have experience of their brief. It always blows my mind when someone comes in from whatever it was. What was Therese Coffey? She was health secretary for a couple of weeks, smoking cigars and God knows what else, and now she's in environment, and they have to suddenly be leading the country on this. And whereas somebody who actually is from
local
that
councils,
field...
I used to remember, when you was a young reporter looking at who represented people at local councils and what was their expertise and brief, except they shouted louder than most other people.
Very confident.
The only thing I would say here is I think sometimes the rhetoric around how we talk about how politicians can be dangerous. If you think about Joe Cox and Sir David Amess in Southend, I think there is a lack of respect in general now. Some of them are doing a very good job.
I totally agree. And do you know what I think, Dawn? I think journalists like ourselves have a lack of respect for them. I think they have allowed this to happen. I think politicians make themselves too easily available for interviews, and they shouldn't be too accountable and available at the snap of a hand, that they come on GB News or they come on the BBC or ITV or whatever it happens to be. And they've made a rod for their own backs.
I think they have, and I think the rhetoric they also use now as well garners a lack of respect amongst us. I mean, the language they use...
It's just sound bites, isn't it?
It's just sound bites. You don't believe a word they're saying. It's just like, I get that's what they do. But some of the language, I mean, the fact that it's acceptable to swear and use and call, people from the other party abusive names.
Yeah, and all it does is lead to apathy and a lack of interest in politics, particularly amongst the young. And then you end up with people who aren't really voting.
When I was a young reporter and came to national television, to get an interview with Michael Heseltine or something, or Norman Tebbit, was a scary experience.
Absolutely.
And absolutely, I mean, they were, Tory grandees, for instance, or Labour grandees, or whatever it happened to be. But I think there was much more respect about it in the language used to Secretary of States. But however, now they're two a penny. You can just get anybody on.
Can you imagine how scared I was having to go and interview Margaret Thatcher in number 10? And I was a baby, and I was absolutely terrified. And now the thought of going to I know I'm older, obviously, going to interview any minister now, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking. Ian Paisley. They didn't get any much more scary than that. Never. Anyway, Dawn, we go to the Daily Mail.
This gets a little bit more scary, maybe, than Ian Paisley. That's spiders.
Sex.
Yeah, go on.
Sex, I can't even say I'm so excited by this story. Sex-crazed spiders are about to invade all our homes. It's the breeding season for our native species. They like to do it in comfort, obviously warm, dry, with a nice glass of wine, whatever. So they are, they are coming into our homes, obviously, in September and October, and having lots of little baby spiders. Now, I love spiders. I once had a pet spider, so I don't have an issue with that at all. However, I get that the way Isabel's looking at me now, not everyone feels the same
Do you know
about
why?
them.
I've just moved house and I live in a very beamy, very old house.
Nooks and crannies.
They are everywhere. And it gets to the point where I get up in the morning, tiptoe to the bathroom so as not to wake everyone. There's a giant spider on the carpet. And I'm like, what? We've bought spider catchers. We've got the spray. It's like the house of horrors.
But you know, the spiders
Oh,
are
look
good
at that.
They keep...
no, well, this is... I tell the children, they catch the flies. It's good. It's part... They catch the flies. We mustn't be scared. I'm leading by example, but inside.
But you've been bitten in bed, and a spider bit you as well. But you have? There was a spider in your sheets.
Yeah, there was a spider in our bed the other day.
Which sort of spider was it, though?
A black one. Big
right,
one.
okay, yeah, okay, black big one. Yeah, that doesn't narrow it down. But the bigger the spider, in general, in this country, the less harmful they are to you. It's the little false widow spiders.
What colour are they?
Black. But they're quite small, Isabel. But it depends on how big is big in your world.
Do you like spiders, Eamonn? And Fraser?
Me?
Yeah.
Not really.
Not really,
I
no.
wouldn't say I'm scared of them or anything, but you do feel a bit unsettled, especially if there's a lot of them.
But would you jump, big squeal in the night like I did?
Sometimes, though, you spot a spider and it knows you're looking at it and it runs, it skitters around.
Yes, it knows.
And other times you could hit it with a broom and it wouldn't move.
Do not hit spiders with a broom.
No, I usually stand on them. No, I don't usually stand on them.
Eamonn.
Anyway, thank you very much indeed, Fraser and Dawn. We now thank Alex Burkle for what you're about to receive. Here we go.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost, perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 12th of September. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
See, because everybody's changed galleries, nobody pressed the right switches, so now we realise we're on air, which is good. Here's what we've been covering on Breakfast so far this morning.
The parliamentary researcher arrested on suspicion of spying for China claims he's completely innocent as fears grow of a whole network of Beijing informants in Westminster.
With net migration, you know, the entertainment factor in this show is so good. All the things that go wrong are mostly better than the things that go right. Anyway, let's talk about illegal crossings, net migration and people's opinions to it. It's at record highs. Dissatisfaction with the government's handling of immigration control is now at its highest level since before Brexit.
As the controversial online safety bill goes through its final stages in Parliament, reality TV stars are set to descend on Downing Street to support the controversial new regulations.
The deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, has branded the government's levelling up policy as a sham and a scam.
And we'll be bringing you the latest weather forecast with Alex Burkill.
Good morning. A bit of rain around today and it will feel cooler than of late too. I'll have more details later.
You've been very good getting in touch the usual ways. GB News, you can tweet there or you can do the email version, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Marie, for you. Derek talking about the home internationals were scrapped because of the violence that followed them, especially England v Scotland games. It had nothing to do with money. They were all money spinners and very popular. Bruno is not happy about the way the country's being run. It's not financially worth going to work anymore. And Alan says HS2, why start HS2 in London and not Birmingham and work both ways? If it's cancelled, who will benefit?
I agree. Nobody will benefit. We'll all be losers with that. There we go. Top story this morning is questions have been raised over Britain's China policy after a researcher at Parliament was arrested on suspicion of spying.
This comes as the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, claims we can't afford to cut ties with China and insisted that a row over spying should not result in a breaking of ties with Beijing.
The Prime Minister, meanwhile, has told the House of Commons that the sanctity of Westminster must be protected, with the parliamentary researcher in question denying all allegations.
Well, our political editor, Christopher Hope, joins us now from Westminster. Good morning to you, Christopher. This is a headache for the government. They want to try and keep China sweet, but then, you know, they've also got these people swarming round the seat of democracy.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? There's 17,000 people, Isabel, who have access to the building behind me, Parliament, and the big issue there is, are they all okay, or is anyone working for foreign actors? Now, I understand from this morning, from sources in Parliament, there'll be no review as things stand of who has passes to get inside Parliament, despite this pressure from China hawks led by Ian Duncan Smith. He said that there could be some form of Chinese intelligence cell at the heart of Westminster. So the big issue is, why won't the government do more? But the answer, of course, is the government wants to trade more with China and engage with China. Earlier we heard from Michelle Donlan. She had this to say.
Someone didn't hear what Chris was saying. He was saying Michelle Donlan. This is what she had to say.
China presents a challenge both to our national security but also to our values, and so our approach therefore needs to be one of engagement but also one of robustness, and that's certainly the approach that we've been taking. We've cracked down on Chinese investment in our nuclear sector, in our semiconductors. We didn't meet with China at a top level for many years, from 2018 I believe it is until last week. We're in line with our Five Eyes, if not more forthright in our approach. But as I said, you know, it would be very naive to just pretend that China didn't exist, and it wouldn't be in the interest of British industry, British jobs, tackling climate change. The list goes on.
That's Michelle Donlan there, setting out why the government is now trying to deal with China, because, of course, this is going back to when David Cameron was Prime Minister, George Osborne. There's a big attempt to deal more with China. I was one of the journalists on the 747s that went to China to try and get business deals. That ended under Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, when, of course, Liz Truss in the Commons yesterday saying that China should be recategorised as a threat to this country. Rishi Sunak's trying to bring that all back into the middle ground and say, look, we need to do more to try and trade with China. We can't ignore them. But Labour, of course, for their part, are concerned about it. Let's see what Justin Matters had to say.
I don't think you should suck up to them or completely ignore them. You can't ignore them. They're a massive part of this economy, whether we like it or not. There's 140,000 Chinese students here. We have £100 billion worth of trade. So we have to have open dialogue with them. That doesn't mean that we should not be robust with them when it's required, whether it's on human rights abuses, whether it's on security concerns. But we've also got to work with them on issues of global concerns such as climate change. So, yeah, we challenge them when we have concerns, but to just completely ignore them, I think, would be the wrong move.
That's Justin Matters, the shadow business minister. Of course, Labour can say what they like. They're not in power yet, but that might change when they do get into power if the polls are true, because the party is so far ahead in the polls.
Christopher, can I ask you about the triple lock? We're hearing it could go up by 8% next year. Rishi Sunak being told it's kept pensioners afloat during the cost of living crisis. What do you make about all this?
Well, I think this is the next big political issue in Westminster. This triple lock pension says that the triple lock guarantee of the state pension says that the state pension must go up by either CPI inflation, average wages, or 2.5%. Well, we're seeing today from the ONS that average wages rose by 8.5% in September. That means there's going to be an increase in the state pension of that number or around that number next year. But is that affordable? William Hague, who's the former Tory leader, he's a key mentor really for Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. He's saying it's unaffordable. We asked the Prime Minister on the weekend trip to the G20. He wouldn't commit to increasing state pension by the triple lock, but he did point out it was long-standing policy. So I think at this point about whether to support pensioners, of course, on fixed incomes to try and increase their state pension will become a big talking point for the rest of this week.
Thanks for the roundup. Appreciate it there from Westminster. Meanwhile, Home Office data reveals that since the EU referendum, there's been an 8-fold increase in the number of asylum seekers being housed in conservative areas.
And according to other research, dissatisfaction amongst British public at the government's handling of immigration is at its highest level since before the Brexit vote.
2/3 of people questioned across the country said they are dissatisfied with the way politicians in charge are dealing with the issue.
Well, let's go to local government editor at Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs. And this is a big problem for Rishi Sunak because, of course, we know stopping the boats is one of his 5 pledges.
Absolutely, it's crucial for him to do it. He could still do it. There's the Supreme Court decision coming up in a couple of months on the Rwanda scheme. Even if the government lose that, they've got a big majority in Parliament. If Parliament wants to push through legislation, it can quite rapidly. So it could do whatever is necessary in terms of repealing the Human Rights Act or us withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights or changing our relationship with the ECHR. So it would be possible to get those flights going to Rwanda. It's an uncapped arrangement we've got with Rwanda, so that could be done on a substantial scale. I think then if people, if asylum seekers in France thought, right, at the moment we want to go to Britain because we've got a better deal in Britain than we have in France, if they thought, well, there's a very high probability of going to Rwanda, they'd probably think, oh, we'd rather stay in France. So I think there is still time to do it, but Rishi Sunak needs to be very tough and determined about it. I do think that people, when we voted for Brexit, thought, right, we've now got control of our borders, we can control the amount of immigration. Wouldn't mean stopping immigration, but certainly that we should have control over it. And I think, therefore, they're entitled to look to the government to make use of that power we've got as an independent country.
What about this argument from Sir Keir Starmer that he's the only one to be able to bring order to the border, off to Europol tomorrow to talk to the authorities about trying to stop the boats himself, and then off to Canada to talk to people there trying to argue this isn't an issue exclusively for the right?
Well, he's got no credibility at all, of course. But if the flights to Rwanda did start before the general election, as I think they certainly could, I think that's entirely possible. Then the challenge for the Labour Party will be to say, are they going to stop those flights? At the moment, they seem to be saying that that sending people to Rwanda is somehow immoral, as if the people smugglers going over is somehow acceptable. By the way, I saw in the Times this morning, it said people smugglers are tutoring migrants in violence and criminality, pulling them into their gangs with offers of cut price deals on channel crossings. So that's not exactly providing any reassurance that just continuing with the status quo of the people smugglers being in business is morally acceptable. So I think if Keir Starmer isn't backing the Rwanda scheme, then he would need to come up with something that would be a credible alternative, and he hasn't done that.
Very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Right, the time now, 9:10. Britain's newsroom at 9:30. We're 20 minutes away. Here's Andrew and Bev to tell you what they're talking about.
Good morning.
Morning, both. Morning. This shocking survey from female NHS workers being sexually assaulted in hospitals. We're going to try and...
Surgeons, yeah.
In operating theatres, sometimes during surgery.
That's right. So we're going to try and work out what exactly is going on there. We're going to be talking to a surgeon and I think some NHS doctors and lawyers, aren't we, about this, of how this could have happened.
It makes you think, Beverly, we're so shocked at hearing that, and particularly as Andrew was saying, in the middle of surgery. There were 11 rapes included in this as well. I know. And you just wonder, do we know about it because they've surveyed about it? In other words, does this go on in every workplace in the land?
It's been
I think surgery is very much a male, has been very much a male-dominated world.
Very much.
I think that is changing.
Yeah, but some of these female surgeons saying when they've talked to their bosses, oh, don't complain. Don't raise a, don't make a fuss.
Yeah.
And because they're about to go into a big operation, or the operation's underway, they carry on.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to damage the patient.
Unbelievable. Disposable vapes, something that we feel strongly about. Anybody with teenagers knows what a big issue this is.
Exactly.
Potentially going to be banned here, disposable ones, as they have been in France. We're going to be talking about that.
And that big immigration survey, which shows people are more fed up now about the state of immigration than before Brexit, is because they've lost control of the borders. Legal migration through the roof, illegal migration across the channel through the roof.
Yeah.
They've got to get a grip.
But Andrew, we talk about this all the time. They're not going to get control of it. It's not going to return. I'm sorry, I can't see any way that they can stop this.
Well, I mean, and they're pinning everything on Rwanda, and we don't even know what the courts are going to decide on that.
And even if it does go ahead, it's, 200, 300 people?
They're supposed to act as a deterrent, and then they may do other countries, but they talked about an Atlantic island. That's not happening. So it's a huge problem, and it's going to really cost the Tories dearly.
And the taxpayer.
And the taxpayer, and social cohesion and all the other problems.
Yeah, the will just doesn't seem to be there, does it? The people who work at the Home Office perhaps do not think that immigration is a problem, one might say. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And we're going to be looking at Joe Biden's latest gaffe.
What did he do? What did he do this time?
Oh, you're going to have to stay tuned to watch it, Eamonn Holmes.
He announced at a press conference, we've got to give him a hint, I'm going to bed now.
He actually
said,
he did
I'm going to bed now.
I'm going to bed now. And
absolute chaos in his press conference. You couldn't hear anything for all the shouting, and then he shuffled off.
Had to say the press conference is over while he was in mid-sentence. Presumably he was going to bed.
I don't know why I'm laughing at this.
No,
because he's the leader of the free world.
The leader of the free world.
He's clearly not, is he? That's the point. He's clearly not. Who is?
Who's running the world?
Puppeteer leader.
Yeah.
Puppet leader.
I hope it's not that moronic Vice President Kamala Harris, because
no, she's
don't hear a lot about her these days, though.
No, but she's going to be his running mate next time.
The thing I worry about Joe Biden is many things, but this stagger that he has, this walk, I don't know if you noticed it. I can't walk or else I would show you, but it's, he's definitely not in control of all his...
Right, he's going to go tumbling over.
Yeah.
As is everybody around him.
There should be some sort of clause that says a limit on age. I think it needs to be, if I'm allowed to say, I think it should be under 70.
Or there should be a cognitive test.
Cognitive test,
That would do it.
There shouldn't need to be, should there? There should just be enough sensible people in the world. It is so
There is a population of 330 million in the United States, and that's what they've got.
OK, guys, really pleased to see you, and have a good show from 9:30. After the break, we're talking about suicide prevention. This is Suicide Prevention Week. Loneliness. Loneliness, if you're lonely, if you've experienced loneliness, it can be a big killer. Find out why after this. What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The number of suicides in this country is absolutely depressing, as is the lack of mental health care for so many people. But the government's pledged a new prevention strategy during this suicide prevention week. And we talked to psychotherapist now, Lucy Beresford, about this. With suicide, and it's hard, I mean, in Northern Ireland, we see it all, it's so high and it's amongst young males, but that's not necessarily the same pattern everywhere. It can affect different age groups and sexes and whatever.
Yes, and this new strategy that the government announced yesterday addresses some really big subsections of society. Middle-aged men in particular are very, very at risk of taking their own life, but also people who have gambling addiction, people who've been through the prison services, new mums or people who are pregnant. And there is a whole package of measures and lots of new funding and funding for existing support services.
Lucy, are we recognising this more, or is it on the up?
It's a bit of both. I think we're definitely easier about talking about it. And one of the things that the pandemic left us with was this chronic epidemic around loneliness. And that is one of the things I wanted to mention today, is because we do have a Minister for Loneliness in Stuart Andrew.
Do we?
Yeah. And he's spoken out, actually, he's spoken on my podcast, On the Couch, about his role and one of the ways in which he feels he can give back to society, because he himself has felt very lonely in his early years, but also as an MP. I think we're better at talking about it, but the one thing we're not very good at, and Sajid Javid wrote so movingly about this at the weekend, is we don't reach out to the people we love and the people in our families and friends. His brother took his own life. So just very quickly, we don't really talk about people killing themselves or committing suicide any longer, because it isn't a crime, but taking their own life. It's a very desperate place to be. And a lot of people look as if they're functioning. They look as if they're on top of their lives and they know what they're about. But actually underneath that, they're really struggling. They don't want to let you know. They're ashamed of that. If we can somehow encourage each other to talk to each other, we've lost those soft skills through the pandemic and
What does talking do? Why would talking make a difference?
It suddenly makes you feel that you're not alone, because I think it's that overwhelm of believing that you're the only one going through something like this. You're the only one experiencing the intensity of that pain, and also the sense that you don't see any other way out. That if you actually open up to someone else and listen, it takes a lot to do that, to be vulnerable enough to say to your own loved ones, I'm really struggling here.
Yeah, and look, if you are struggling, and we're sitting here talking, Isabel's got a number here for the Samaritans.
Yeah, well, you can call them day or night, 365 days a year on 116 123, or if you prefer, rather than speak to them, you can email. It's joe@samaritans.org, or you can visit their website, or indeed you can just go to their nearest branch. There's loads of support out there, and Samaritans are the leading charity when it comes to these sorts of things.
One of the things I'm doing in October is I'm doing a fundraiser in Huddersfield in the town hall there for a voluntary charity platform one, they're called, and they have two rail carriages, and they counsel for free people who need all this, because, Lucy, the help is not there on the NHS. I mean, an overstretched NHS, and they just can't deal with this tsunami of pressure.
That's very true, but there are definitely other resources that aren't attached to the NHS, that aren't accessible through GPs, but are accessible in other ways. As you say, there are lots of voluntary groups, lots of charities that are dealing with people with autism, people with gambling addiction, people with other compromising conditions that are making life feel really difficult. Citizens Advice Bureau, groups near me in Westminster, a place called the Listening Project. Unfortunately, you do have to kind of Google these things and try and...
Yeah.
And I think it's the signposting that's the weakest area of the government's initiatives, is that we don't know that there is all this support and help out there. We imagine, oh, it's always about trying to get a therapist and there's a year's waiting list. There are lots of other ways and lots of other means of connecting with people. We come into this world physically joined to another human being. That is our template of safety and security. And when you ask me why is it so important to talk, it's because that's the thing that makes us feel so alive, connection. And that's why the lockdowns were so crucifying to people's mental health. And they didn't take that into account. They took other things into account, the government, in thinking about protecting society. But what they missed out on was what would that do to people's sense of connectivity.
Well, they say problem shared is a problem halved. There's a lot of truth in that. And Lucy, thank you for explaining all of that on this Suicide Prevention Week. And yeah, if you are at home listening or watching to this, lots of support out there available, as you say, through the Samaritans and lots of other really great charities.
Thanks for watching today. We'll be back top of the morning tomorrow from 6. Have yourselves a good day.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Good morning. For many, there's a bit of a cooler feel around at the moment, with some rain across parts of England in particular, and also the risk of a little thunder later. Taking a look first thing, and yes, a cloudy, wet start across this central slice of England into southwest England as well. Through the morning, some of that rain across parts of Lincolnshire into East Anglia could be quite persistent and heavy at times. Meanwhile, in the far southeast, high humidity could allow for some heavy, perhaps even thundery downpours to develop as we go into the afternoon, whilst across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, a brighter picture, just a scattering of showers, though most places avoiding these. Highs lower than recently, but could get to around 24 or 25 Celsius in the southeast. Through the end of the day, we're going to continue to see a quite cloudy, wet picture across parts of the southeast. That rain will gradually clear away as we go through the night. Otherwise, quite a good deal of clear skies and a slack flow. Under this slack flow, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip, a real contrast to last week. Some places across parts of Scotland could get close to freezing, perhaps a touch of grass frost, maybe even a localised air frost perhaps. First thing on Wednesday morning then, cloudy to start off in the southeast. Any rain will clear away quite quickly. Otherwise, a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather through a good chunk of the morning, but then things turn wet and windy from the northwest as we go into the afternoon due to a deep area of low pressure that's going to arrive later. Quite a cloudy picture compared to some recent days, and temperatures down a couple of degrees and feeling cooler in the winds.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.